Hello, welcome back to the Live Rally Games podcast. My name is Steven Stewart, and I'm here with more Surviving Reelfoot unfinished business content for you. And today we're talking with the fourth place player from this season, Carley. Carley, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm back to my normal life, working in the hospital and in Chicago.
Well, I have to ask, we were talking a little bit before, and how has the past 2 months of the postseason been? Was there a lot of processing you were going through, or you're just like ready to just get back to your life after a game like that?
A mix. I was ready to get back to my life. And for me, when I'm done with the game, it's kind of like an emotional experience when you get voted out, and to get voted out on the last day, like the last person voted out. I was like disappointed, which I think is like rightfully so. So I haven't like looked at a ton of information. Some of my friends watched and we've talked about it, but other than that, I haven't really gone back and viewed a ton of things. I felt like I just kind of needed a break.
When your game comes down to that final four, did you feel consumed by the coulda, shoulda, wouldas of just things you should have done differently to reach that point? You're kind of like you kind of felt good about just letting it go and going back to normal life and letting that kind of heal it.
I didn't have a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas. I mean, I had a few, but so much of it came down to that last day, like the second to last day, the last full day of the game for me. I was just so sick that day that if I had felt healthy that day, I think I could have thought through a few things better. But I just didn't have the brain capacity. I genuinely could not stop vomiting for it felt like at least 12 hours where I was like very sick. So there wasn't a lot I could do to really be better at that point.
So it was the final 8 or final 7 challenge that has you running back and forth through that field, because that feels like, I know on camera, like you could tell that that's having a very strong effect on you. And so was it that challenge, or was you already sick and that challenge was then layered on top of it?
I started getting sick the night before when it was bedtime. I started vomiting that night. And then I slept and woke up that morning and was sick. And then we did the auction. In the auction, I got some almonds and a Coke. And the Coke, I think, really spiked my blood sugar and just made it worse. So then I was like sick up until the challenge. And so when we started that challenge, and that day was like 90 something degrees. I've looked it up since, in super high humidity. So it was like a perfect storm for me, already not feeling well and my stomach already doing really poorly, and then the weather. And if you watch that stream, I know for a fact I ran about 0 times, because I knew, especially in the early few rounds, because I knew that I could memorize it in one go, when a lot of other people I knew were not going to be able to do that. So it was like a fast power walk moment. There was a few times where I felt like decent for a second and I threw in like a couple skips. But there was not really any running taking place on my end until it came down to like the last 4 of us probably. And then I like kicked it into like a jog here and there.
So had you been feeling better on that last full day, are there any notable things you would have done differently?
See, like that's where I'm like, I don't know if there's specifics as far as votes and things go. But I would have been able to be more a part of conversations. I would have been able to articulate better what I was thinking or what I wanted. I remember specifically there was a conversation with, I guess it was right after that challenge, where one, I did not want to stand up. I was like, am I having a heat stroke? Like I need to just lay here for a minute. And then the conversation I remember specifically happening is when everyone was like, if we were deciding if we were going to Blindside Reynolds. Austin was talking to me about that. And I was I was on board, but I needed to like think through how I wanted to handle it and the best way to handle it for me. And I like just wasn't able to really talk the way that I normally would have and had been throughout the game. I was more just able to listen and kind of try and process the information. I just don't think I was processing as fast as I would have liked to or been able to communicate like as well as I normally would have if I wasn't trying not to throw up.
Yeah, I played a game this summer and I wasn't 100% of the game, and it was frustrating to be like, man, I just don't feel on top of it. But given what you were going through, that sounds just really debilitating. Just like, I like just kind of like, I just couldn't do what I knew I could.
Right, exactly. That's the main conversation where I look back with Austin and I'm like, it happened. I think it would have happened the same way, but maybe I would have realized that, not necessarily realize. I was trying to think through how to handle that situation the best way without really pissing off Amber and Reynolds, and I would have probably handled the situation a little bit differently if I had felt 100%. Or I guess you're never going to be 100% that far into the game, but like if I would have felt
throwing
like
up is a pretty notable.
like,
well, I'd like to back up a bit and kind of start from like kind of your road to Reelfoot. Is like, how did you discover Reelfoot to begin with? What led you to apply for Fowler's Point?
Yeah, so I used to be like a pretty active orger back in, I'd say like 2016 or 17 through on and off through 2020. And I met Parker that way. Parker and Pete, actually. The first org I ever played was actually hosted by Carlos, and Pete competed in that season as well. So I met Pete that way, and then Pete actually is one of the people who made me cry at the finale of that game. I got to the end and lost, but it's fine. But then I met Parker. He hosted a game that I played during that time too. So I was just in the Facebook group for a while through like knowing them and through knowing orcs. And I was at work one night and it was slow and I was on my phone and it was the last day that applications were open. And I talk about Survivor and things all the time at work. So I was like, should I just apply to this, guys? And then my friends were like, absolutely. Like, let's make your video right now in the break room. And so we did. And I got called to a code blue during the process of making the video and had to like pause and run and like save someone's child and then came back and finished my video.
This feels like what you should have done for your CBS Survivor application video. That would have been fantastic.
I don't know if I ever want to play Survivor CBS, to be honest.
How come?
I know that's not probably a popular answer you hear from people who play LRGs.
I think given you've spent 8 days in the kind of the backwoods of Tennessee, in the heat, in the rain, you're not eating. I think that gives you a pretty good judgment call of like, I've done this 8 days. Could I really do this? Do I really want to do this for 26 days? Like physically, do I want to do it? And then there's a whole aspect of like, am I okay with being on TV and everything that entails, right?
Yeah, it's the on TV thing. I like the idea of like the I can't say it. Anonymity. There we go. Like just existing in my life and not having strangers commenting on it or like commenting on what I'm doing, the decisions I'm making, what I look like all those things. It's like, I don't really know if I want to put myself through that. I don't generally go looking for things to hurt my own feelings. And I feel like being on TV is an invitation to let strangers try and hurt your feelings.
Yeah, and so for that reason, like live reality games are a great way. Like I have this passion. I want to play it out, and it's a safer space. I mean, it's still publicish in a sense. Like hundreds of people may be watching Reelfoot, but like the people aren't going to go stalk you on Twitter and follow your every move and post about you on Reddit.
Yeah, or like call my job. So I started out as a Big Brother fan, so maybe this is where a lot of the fear comes from. But like, I don't really want people calling my job 7 years later to try and get me fired because I like voted out their favorite. Like that's not really something I'm excited about.
So you apply to Reelfoot, you get accepted. What was your feeling going into that first season?
I'd never been camping in my entire life. I had zero outdoor experience. I knew I had like a fair amount of org experience, so like I understood Survivor strategy in that way. And I'm like a fairly social person, so I felt like decent about that. But like I wasn't super athletic. Like I was not I shouldn't say wasn't, I am not super athletic.
Mm-hmm.
I was in worse shape that season than I was this season. So like I didn't think that the competitions were really going to be where I excelled, but I knew I could do decent enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really the elements that were the scary thing for me going in originally. And it was where I struggled in the beginning of the game for sure.
Well, because I'm gonna double check the voting chart from your season, but I don't think you don't catch any votes at all, at least on your first drive.
I did not catch a single vote until we swapped, but I was not in any sort of position of power on my original tribe either.
Do you feel like you've been trouble had your original Noka tribe had to go to a third tribal council?
Potentially.
Okay.
Potentially. I remember Sharif, I think, I don't know for certain. We'd had conversations post game where I think that might have been the case. I think he was kind of worried about Barbara and Josh's relationship because he was so close with Josh too, which we know they ended up to be like these three musketeers because of how the swap played out. But pre-swap, I think that there could have been some moving around there. But we'll never know.
Well, you make it to the swap, and what's frustrating with this experience is that I think your name ends up being kind of a last-minute switch, from my understanding of the scramble. I think it was supposed to be Sebastian, and it switched to you because I remember Angela saying, I put a lot of work into like really forming a relationship with Carley because I wanted to go far with Carley. Then last minute we're switching, and I'm really frustrated about this. I'm losing a person I invested a lot of time in, and and I think it's always my experience frustrating watching the people who survive the tropical council go so deep and be like, oh, that was my ticket. I just missed it.
I had a feing. Not that I was going. I was a little bit blindsided then. Like I knew it was possible because I was in the minority. But I had a feeling even going into that vote that like if I survive this, I'm going deep. And like I knew that. So I think it was like just like very heartbreaking to when I got voted out because I was like, damn, like I know I would go far if I could just survive this vote. And Megan and Bash did. So like my feeling about that was right. I guess what I've learned ended up happening is it ended up being like a Lauren versus Storm situation. Lauren wanted to keep Megan because Lauren was moving to Boston and she felt like and Megan's from Boston, they had like this sort of connection that they could talk about. And Storm wanted to keep me. And Lauren won, basically. Because Angela was going to let them decide, I think, because it was going to work out for her either way. But yeah.
Like most of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So
we have a comment from Dina basically saying your improvement from your first season this season was generally how the first one should have gone because you've always been a strategist and beast. And I think I haven't calculated, but you might have had the best improvement from one season to the next.
Did I? Like in placement?
Yeah, in placement. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I haven't gone and done the math. I have a feeling looking at everyone else, like, quite possibly. Yeah.
I'll take it. I feel like that's probably correct. It was a big jump.
And so walking out of, Fowler's Points, and kind of like, what was your kind of takeaway from the season? What were you feeling post that season?
Unlucky, I think was the biggest word. And I insisted from the time I was voted out, like there's so much luck in Survivor. And I've always believed that, just down to order of challenges, who you're placed with, all sorts of things come down to luck. And so I felt really unlucky. And I think there's like littler things that I could have done. The first time I played, I was intimidated by the situation. And like just tired and things, but trying to like figure that out. And I could have been a little more social and started gaming a little quicker. I think I wasn't maybe quick enough on the draw on my original tribe, but they're not the ones who even voted me out. So it was people from my swap tribe. And so I think I handled that swap as well as I could have with the hand I was dealt. So really, I felt unlucky.
I'm looking at, because Megan votes Sebastian, you vote Sebastian. I think Sebastian actually votes for you.
Yeah, everyone else voted me.
Yeah. but they're all from they're all from the yellow tribe, the Quantland tribe.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about when you get the call asking to come back for a second season. Was that an immediate yes, or did you have to do some processing?
It was an immediate yes. It was a lot of shock. So we didn't obviously know the theme. So I was like, I was just fourth boot and like didn't do anything impressive. Like, why me? I guess was my thought process. But like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll like text my trainer and tell her what's going on because I want to be in better shape this time and like let's do it.
So what did you do to prep for the season?
I lost like 25 pounds actually between my first and second time playing.
Congrats, that's all. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. And so my trainer knew about it this time. I didn't tell anybody the first time because I was like, this could be embarrassing. And it was a little embarrassing. So, but I told her about it this time and stuff. So we just upped my cardio and trained differently. And I'm glad I did because it definitely made a difference, even though a lot of the cast, especially like in the merge and stuff, was in way better shape than I was. I would have been a lot more embarrassed had we not. So
I don't know. Statistically, you and Todd were the best people to have in your tribe in the pre-merge, right? Because you only go the one tribal council your entire pre-merge. You win all the other challenges.
Yeah, I think I'm like mediocre at most things. So I'm not gonna like be the most impressive at anything, but respiratory therapy. But yeah, not at my job. I tend to keep my patients alive. So.
So you make a plan with your trainer. Is there anything else or you mostly focusing on the physical aspect of the game?
Mostly just like spinning out, wondering who was going to be there, but
messaging
Parker a lot.
Well, a couple of days before the game begins, you actually receive a list of the cast, and there's a good amount of familiar faces for you, specifically from your original Blue Tribe, Unoga from Fowler's Point. What would you think of
that? I hadn't really kept in touch, to be honest. I hadn't really kept in touch with anyone from my original season. And I didn't really click with my original tribe the first time we played together. Like I was happy to be swapped when I swapped, and I felt like I had gotten maybe just clicked quicker with my swap tribe, even though they voted me out. So I didn't know what to think about that.
Was there anyone else you recognize or notice or were excited to see?
Yeah, so Reynolds I've known since I started playing orgs. So what's that, 5 or 6 years? And when I was voted out on my original season, he was on production, and so I spent a lot of time in the pre-jury in the house with Reynolds and Taylor, and I met Skylar in May, and who else anyone who was on production last season, Frank, Nate, Amber. So like I had met them all, and being in like the org community for so long, I was like very much aware of Taylor and Carlos and Amber and Reynolds, like, and I knew how close they were. Like none of that ever came to as any surprise to me during the game. I'm sorry, I don't really remember where I was going.
Oh yeah, just talking about your impression of the cast and who you recognize, and were you concerned about anyone?
Oh, I don't know about necessarily concerned. No, I didn't know what to expect. Anyone who was not from my season or who hadn't been like on production the previous season, I did not know, except for Carlos because he'd hosted me. Yeah. But I wouldn't say anybody that I played with was someone that I had regularly had contact with. I'd say Reynolds and I talk like once a year, kind of. And Reynolds is someone who we have enough in like common and like talk the same way and stuff that, and like are interested in a lot of the same things that when we talk, it's like very easy, but we don't really keep in touch regularly.
So you arrive to Reelfoot, and anything you want to talk about right before the game begins, or do you want to get into the game?
Yeah, my favorite story to tell is right before the game begins. It's like an hour before I'm leaving, Carlos messages me. And I'm like, oh, it's like Carlos going to pregame with me. No, he's just asking if I have Temu, which is that like site where you can get free stuff, and he just wanted me to sign up to get free stuff. So then I was like, okay, let me sign up real quick because I mean, people had been messaging. Once we found out the cast, we were allowed to message each other. So I was like, well, let me sign up so I'm not first boot because I didn't download Temu for Carlos.
So once the game formally begins and after you sign up for Temu, I want to talk about two things. First, you learn that the shot in the dark is in play. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or at least do you have any thoughts coming into the game on the shot in the dark?
No, I don't. I'm like kind of a new Survivor hater, so I was like, oh, okay.
I have never heard that turn of phrase before. This is amazing.
It's like not, I just don't like it that much. So when I heard the thing, I was like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. And I actually thought it ended up being so fun. Like, especially, I don't think I was at any of the tribals where it worked successfully.
Which made it even more fun.
Which made it even more fun. I remember after the first swap, I'm horrible at tribe names, but when I was swapped onto red, that camp was the closest one to tribal council, and it was very close to tribal council, and we heard screaming one night, and I was like, and I said it out loud, I was like, I think Skylar used her shot in the dark and it worked, and we came back and that's exactly what had happened, because I was like, because we knew she was in trouble, and then we heard the screaming, and that was like my first guess.
And then the second thing is you learn the season name is Unfinished Business. And so when you heard that, what was going through your mind? Did you feel like you had unfinished business?
First of all, I loved the name. I thought the name was like so badass. But yeah, I felt like I didn't feel like I had anything to prove to myself. I didn't go in with like a chip on my shoulder. I went in feeling like, oh, like I had a lot of bad luck the first time. But I felt like I had unfinished business as far as like proving to everyone else that like I can play Survivor. Like I know Survivor strategy. I can play Survivor strategy. And I'm glad that it sounds like other people believe me now.
So you end up on the yellow tribe, the Galelo tribe. Do you mind if we kind of talk through the people here and just kind of your thoughts and like your first reactions to being on a tribe with them?
Yeah, let's go.
So talk to me about Megan. Megan, you started with on Onoga and Fowler's Point. Did you have much relationship on that tribe, and what was it like being back in a tribe with her?
No, so on original Unoga, no, we did not really have much of a relationship at all. When we swapped, we kind of needed each other. So that's when we started to like talk and try and play together. And then at that point, I was like, oh, I can play with Megan. So I felt okay about being on tribe with her again. Like I didn't really know what to expect with Megan. We never got like close or anything like that. But I at least knew from the swap that like we could probably potentially work together if it made sense.
What about Todd? So Todd played the season before you, and so he's one of the players you don't know much about.
I didn't know anything about Todd. I was like, Todd seems scary in challenges, so it's like it was nice to have him on our tribe. But I didn't have like any real first impression. And I had met Todd. He did come to season 10, make like jambalaya and stuff. So I'd met him and he'd been very nice. So I didn't have any like strong feelings either way, but I was happy to see Todd there.
Now, Skylar, you mentioned she had been on production the prior year, so you had encountered her then.
I love Skylar. She's like a fellow Swiftie. And so like even when she went to the Eras tour, she went like the first night, she like FaceTimed me during the song so I could like see it. So like Skylar and I would say had talked since last year, since we'd met. So I was happy to see Skylar. Skylar was the person I was most happy to see on my tribe. And I was really hoping to be on a tribe with Skylar. Of everyone there, Skylar's the number one person I wanted to be on a tribe with. So I was very happy to see that.
Talk to me about Adam.
I did not know what to expect from Adam. I obviously didn't see his season. Adam is so much fun that when I first met him, I didn't believe it. Like I didn't no, like I didn't think he was being genuine. It took me like probably 3 to 4 days to believe Adam was actually being genuine. And like that this was his personality, because in my mind, like no one is just that happy and that on and like nice all the time. So that was shocking to me that he was like a real person.
And then Brent as well also played several years before you in Caliban's Revenge. What was your first impression of him?
I liked Brent. I think Brent and I started talking more though, probably day 2 or 3. I think, see, I don't see myself as like a quiet person, but something I've learned about myself from the last 2 seasons is that I'm like a little bit quieter than I think I am. So I think it takes me a little longer to open up than I realized. But I like adored Brent, especially after we swapped. Brent was like my favorite person in the game, and then that twist happened and he was gone. But apparently he was a lot of favorite people. He was everybody's favorite person.
A lot of people have mentioned us really wanting to work with Brent really being integral to their plans. And so Brent, I can't fault the Amber Reynolds, Carlos Taylor plan of sniping him, because I think he would have been very well insulated had he made it to the merge.
Oh, I definitely think so. I think I didn't even know some of his relationships, like how strong some of them were from our original tribe. And then like, I think not just with Brent, but in general, something that I didn't foresee coming into this game is, to me, like I would have voted out my mother. Like I would have voted out my best friends, my 2-year-old nephew, if he didn't work for my plan, like he's on the chopping block. I didn't realize how serious people were going to take their previous relationships, and that like friendships would be on the line if you didn't do what they wanted, because I would have voted out anybody. Like there was no like, and I wouldn't have been offended to be voted out by anyone in my life either. Because I'm like, I came to do a game and it's not $1 million. Like I wouldn't vote out my mom in Real Survivor, because if she wins $1 million, I'm eating good too. But like, this is more just a pride thing. So a pride thing, yeah, like my mom can go. Like.
So Parker, we need the cast in the Blue vs. Water season. We need to have Carley in it because she will vote out her mom, and we can have an iconic moment for Reelfoot history.
I can't.
We did have a player try to vote out her son in my season, so I will say we've almost had it happen.
And so like, we would have been on the same page. I would have been like, yeah, like let's get your boy. Like he's got to go.
And finally, talk to me about Corey. Corey played on the very first season.
Oh, Corey is a hoot. He was very, very quiet in the beginning, and then sometimes he would just say like the funniest thing you've ever heard in your life. So yeah, that's Corey. There's like a fond memory I think we all have of him like coming out of a trash bag in the morning, because that was his poncho and that was his sleepy bag.
I mean, that's just my favorite thing to hear about him, is that he just brought a trash bag he got from a hotel clerk.
Yes, exactly. You've heard the story clearly. So he was very funny. But we weren't like gaming together or anything on our original tribe. No.
So standing on your tribe mat, looking at this collection of people around you, how were you feeling about this as a tribe?
I was looking around at the other tribes and was like, wow, we're going to be the boring ones. Like people are not going to care what we're doing. And then we kept winning, and I was like, wow, we really are like the boring ones. Like people are like, they just are winning and they're not that like crazy compared to the other 2 tribes.
So you have an opening reward challenge where you have to race out, collect letters, and solve like a phrase and scramble. Unfortunately, you all get disqualified early on the challenge because of Todd.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
You had to add that because of Todd. Oh goodness. I mean, no, like it was frustrating because I think like the way it was like sandwich bags with like duct tape, and like our bags had been stuck together. So I think that maybe I wish we could have just ran back and put it back and then done it again, and like maybe had time to catch up in the puzzle. But it was what it was. I think it gave us more drive going into the next challenges to like kick ass, and it worked clearly.
So from there, you're heading back to your camp. What was this first kind of afternoon, evening at camp like? What were you doing?
Oh my God, I genuinely don't remember. Um, I I feel like just talking and surely collecting firewood, and we got our shelter and stuff up very quickly. They gave us more rope than last season.
Oh, that's always
And that
nice.
was my yeah, and that was the camp that I originally was on. That was the original Unoga camp
Oh,
last season. And so I was praying for no rain because when it rained and that camp just was solid mud and like horrific. So I'm glad we had more rope to hang our shelter. And yeah, I was excited to just talk to everybody and kind of get to know everybody. But I don't think I made anything official that night that I remember.
was there any player on the tribe you're really kind of wanting to focus on? You're really excited to work with them in particular?
Well, I said that Skylar was someone I really
Yeah.
wanted to work with. And so I was definitely talking to Skylar, but I was also like not gonna spend a lot of my
Hmm.
time talking to Skylar because I already think we felt good and on the same page. So I was trying to have conversations with other people and feel out where that was going.
How important are idols and advantages to your game? Were those something you were actively looking for this early on?
Would say I was looking more this season than last season,
Hmm.
um, but it's not like the top of my list of things. Like I came in with a checklist of things I wanted to accomplish this season, and finding an idol was definitely not on the list. It joined the list when I found one. It was like a little add-on at the end in the footnotes, but it wasn't like my top thing.
Hmm.
Um, and it became more important at merge for sure when it was the two sides and idols were making a huge impact at that point.
Hmm.
But early on, it wasn't like I was looking, but I wasn't going to spend all my time looking or get caught looking.
Yeah. Anything else you want to mention about that first day or first night?
No, I don't remember it great, to be honest. So
And this is my fault for talking to you a little after, it's a little 2 months after the game. So thank you for being patient with
no,
me.
you're good. I think so my first season, I have very, very little memory of any of it. So
Hmm.
I think like the early days, I don't remember as well. I don't know.
So when you come back for the third time, I'll talk to you immediately. That's what I'm getting
Huh,
out of it.
we'll see.
So the second day, you start with a reward challenge. This is a memory match challenge. How was this challenge for you?
Oh, that's like my challenge.
That's one of the things that a lot of people noted is that memory was your strong suit.
Memory, yeah, for sure. My short-term memory is much better than my intermediate memory. Clearly, I can't remember that day, but like my short-term memory is like excellent. I can memorize very like long lists of things easily. Um, and so I was happy to see that challenge because one, I had done it the season before, and two, I knew it was a chance to like be valuable to my tribe and like show them like, hey, like I can be some brains around here for the coming challenges. Um,
Now during this
Especially
challenge,
because I'm not the most athletic.
players are being sent out of the game back to different tribe sites. Was that something you were concerned about at all, or you're just noting?
Mostly just noting and was happy it wasn't me.
So Adam gets sent to the blue tribe camp. And so after the
Yeah.
challenge of which your team wins, I think your team comes in first.
Hmm.
Adam comes back and what does he tell you about his experience in the blue tribe?
Adam tells me, oh God, is this when Adam says, I see this is,
This is when
I
Adam
want to
goes and is
say
on the
Adam's,
hammock.
yes, that nobody talked to him.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. He says that nobody talked to him and that they were all running around frantically looking for idols, which, given who was on that tribe, very believable. Um, them frantically running around looking for idols and it being general chaos is like very believable to me, just like based on who was there. Um, so I wasn't like that surprised. Like I was inclined to
Hmm.
believe Adam. I had no reason to not believe him. I mean, I would take things with a grain of salt, obviously, given the game we
Hmm.
were playing, but I had no reason to think that he wasn't being honest.
I think I don't know when Brent finds the idol in your tribe, but I think it's like sometime during the second day is when he picks it up.
Yeah. Yes, I'm pretty certain that is when it happened too.
Yeah. So you have your next reward challenge. This is the endurance challenge. You have to hold up boxes between your legs with a partner. Did you compete in this challenge, or were you watching? Or
yes, Skylar and I competed in this challenge together.
How long did you go for?
We were the second team out. We were not doing that great, and they brought out a crock pot, and she was like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's drop." It was a lukewarm water bottle, so it like wasn't exciting, but we knew we weren't gonna win, so we were like, let's just not waste our breath.
I forget who drops after you, but the blue tribe just reaps all sorts of rewards. Maybe it was Austin and his partner drops out for the peanut butter and Oreos, if that's the next one.
Yes, that was no. The next one was Gatorade, and we got it. So we did. Oh no, it was a cocktail. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was a cocktail, and so we dumped the cocktail out and kept the ice in the cup and put the lukewarm water in the cup of ice. Got to share that. But then they brought out Oreos and peanut butter, and we were like, "Oh my god! Like this is exciting." And then I think it was Austin and I don't remember who dropped out on the last second and took it. So I got my water.
It's kind of like Thursday. It's kind of the afternoon of the second day. You mentioned the first day you're just kind of getting to know people. Are you starting to form any like potential alliances with players? Are you feeling iffy about anyone?
The first like alliance I remember forming was with Skylar, Megan, and Brent, the four of us, which I think that they might have already had something before then, if I remember correctly. I think other people had started to form stuff before I jumped in. So I was very aware of my position on that tribe not being the greatest, but I didn't think that there was any way if we went to tribal that I would have been first. Like I still stand by that, even if people maybe think differently. I just don't think there was a world where Skylar would have actively voted me out first. Like I don't think that would have been her preference.
From at least from talking to some other players in the tribe, it sounds like Skylar would have been in the most trouble had your tribe lost.
On the original tribe?
Yeah.
Interesting. See, I'd never heard that either. I was under the impression it was Corey.
Okay. And I think, yeah, so I think it was Megan and Adam maybe we're talking about like how I think that they've been maybe targeting Skylar. So how would you how did you see the tribe dynamics shaking out? Was it like you four and then Adam, Corey, and who's the other yellow I'm missing?
Todd.
Todd.
It's so hard to say when you never go to tribal. Because it looked at like in some ways it looked like Brent, Adam, Megan, and Skylar were working together, and then it looked like maybe me, Skylar, Brent, and Megan were working together, and then it looked like maybe some of the guys were working together, and so like and maybe Megan, and then so like there was just never the opportunity to test it, which is why I went into my swap tribe so unsure about what to do as far as sticking with that group of boys or working with Reynolds, Taylor, and Amber, even though I was very much aware of how close those three were in real life. So it's like I hadn't built any trust with those guys, and we weren't like really instantly clicking on our original tribe either. So like
it sounds like from the original tribe, Brent was really in the middle, kind of between everyone, and was in a really good position.
I think so. I would think so. Yes.
And so had you lost, you would at that point you would probably targeted Corey.
Me personally, probably. Yes.
Talking about like being with Todd after a couple of days, were you having strategic conversations, or were you kind of just coexisting and
coexisting mostly? I had a hard time connecting with Todd on anything. I think we just are different people. Like we just don't have a ton in common, like in our normal lives. So there wasn't like a ton to talk about. I like Todd. I think Todd's great. We just didn't have like a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we swapped and we're like working together, when we swapped, our conversation was very much just like, game, this is the plan, move on. Like it was very quick, short chats. There was not a lot of like bonding.
You mentioned, their first season, you and Megan didn't really connect until you got on that swap tribe. Were things much easier this time because you had that experience in the past with each other?
Yeah, it helped to have like buffer people around on this tribe too, who like got along with both of us, and so like we were in more like group setting conversations. I think. And again, like we just never had anything to test it on that first tribe, so I don't really know.
Clark wants to know that he really wished he had a chance to work with you and been on the same tribe.
I agree. When Parker called us in before the game started to like do our bag check and like go over some rules and stuff, like he called us in one at a time, and he was like, who are you liking? Because we had some time to talk to each other in the house, and one of the first people I mentioned was Clark. So I really wish we would have gotten the opportunity to work together as well. I had a really, really great first impression of Clark. So
you had your first immunity challenge, and this challenge involves swimming, and yet there's some throwing balls in the buckets. There's a snake puzzle at the very end. Where were you in this puzzle?
I was the puzzle.
And so I think that went well for you.
Yeah, I did it. It was scary, and it's intimidating to go up. Well, thankfully there was 3 of us doing it, not just 2 tribes, because if it had been 2 tribes and it was just going to be me against Josh, I would have been like, don't even make me do this. But with 3 people, I felt better about it, and Josh got it done so quickly that I was like, oh God, I'm a moron, like trying to put this together. But I got it done. So that was a very, very exciting moment for me, because I didn't really have any exciting moments like that on my first season. We lost a lot. And so I didn't have a moment where I was like, yeah, I got to like finish this challenge and like do this and win. And so that was really exciting. I loved that moment a lot.
I guess one thing to ask, like, was there ever an idea of like, hey, there's 5, including me, there's 5 original Noga players in this game. What if we got us all together? But it sounds like you were saying like that was not a dynamic you felt very comfortable in.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a dynamic I would have felt very comfortable in. And there was just no way. There was no way that people were going, like Sharif was not going to work with Bash. There was no way on earth that was ever going to happen. Pigs would probably fly first before I could envision that happening. And there was no way that was going to happen for me either. So
with you and Bash, or you and
I wasn't going to work with Bash either.
Why not?
Because I had tried to work with Bash on my original Unoga, and for me, I have a really hard time dealing with people who are very unpredictable to me. That's like not my ideal ally. Like I would rather I don't know. He's just very unpredictable to me, and like a little bit too much energy for me.
So were you surprised to see the next day he was the first person voted out from the Red Tribe?
No, because with Sharif there, no.
So
no, like I had a feeling.
So then you have your second mini challenge. This is the blindfold challenge, where there's different stations with different people blindfolded. Were you in the blindfolded people?
I was one of the blindfolded people that did the middle section with like the alphabet letters, and my parents came and watched that challenge actually. So that was fun. I didn't even get to hug them, but they were there.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Did your parents have to drive really far for that, or they live close by?
So when I played last season, when I got voted out, I like called my mom, just to like talk to her, and she was like, "Hey, like you're my mom's aunt and uncle, so my grandpa's brother and his wife live in Union City."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Union City is like the biggest city near the game, and so last season they actually came and picked me up from the pre-jury house for like a day and like took me out to eat and took me around and stuff. And so this season when I found out I was playing, I stayed with them the night before the game. Like I drove to their house, stayed there instead of a hotel the night before. And then my parents came down and stayed with them for a couple days during the game and got to come out and like see the challenge. So that was really cool.
Okay, that's really fantastic. My parents always like send us your address and like a phone number so you don't get axe murdered by someone. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever get them to come out to a game like that.
Yeah, I think it was just like it was like a way to see their family too, and it was just like a perfect setup. So it was cool.
And it was nice going so deep in the game that you like. It would have been nice to spend time with them, but it was even better to go deep in the game. Hopefully.
Yeah. I wanted them to come kind of early on because I didn't know what was going to happen. But if I had known I was going to go that deep in the game, I obviously would have loved for them to see like an individual immunity and maybe go to a tribal because all of that was like closer together in time and stuff too. But I am just glad that they got to come for anything. It was cool.
So the red tribe loses again, and this time Clark is voted out from that tribe. You then have your third immunity challenge, and this is going to be the gross food challenge.
Yeah, I sat out of this one. I was vegan for 6 years. This year, I started eating just fish now, for some health reasons. But other than that, I don't really eat a lot of things, so I didn't know what to expect. And they told us that there were going to be a vegetarian options, but I didn't know how many. And I was like, what if it's like hot peppers or something? I can't do that, so I sat out.
Well, looking at the gross food challenge, were there any food items you wish you had competed on?
Yes, I did not get anywhere near the amount of food rewards everyone else did. So I would have ate like the collard greens. I would have ate like even the raw eggplant. It had mustard. I'm a mustard girl. I have like 6 bottles of key lime mustard that my parents got me for Easter in my cupboard right now. They got me 6 bottles of mustard for Easter. Like I love mustard, so I would have loved that actually.
What about the onion? You got it later.
That one.
You got your half onion later,
exactly.
right?
But at least mine came with an idol clue. So.
Well, thankfully your tribe wins again. This time it's the blue tribe that loses, and Nate is the one voted out.
Yeah, that one was surprising.
And so, had there been a lot of discussion or concern about a potential tribe swap, or do you think you're going to go farther in these original tribes?
I think we thought a swap was coming. I didn't think that they were going to let us just win forever.
Do you wish you had lost the challenge so you had to vote and see where alliances were?
No, because what if it was me?
Like, always fair.
Right. Like my thing is like, who was it? Michelle, didn't she like win Survivor? Didn't go to tribal until merge. Like I would have taken it. Like it would have been an option for me.
Someone who's been voted out pre-merge, I too would love to but not go to tribal council until merge. That would be amazing.
Right. So no, I wasn't disappointed to had not gone. Especially just because I didn't feel the most solid on that tribe. I didn't think I would have been first boot from that tribe, but I'm glad I didn't have to test it out.
Was there any concern with the yellow being a target because none of the yellows had gone yet? So was that something you were aware of?
Yeah, that's fair. That was a concern. But then when I like saw who my swap tribe was, I felt comforted. I didn't feel like I was in trouble right away on that tribe.
Yeah, so talk to me. Let's talk through the swap tribe because you end up with 4 yellows, 3 blues, 2 reds, I believe. And so from your yellow tribe, it's Brent, Adam, and Todd. You kind of mentioned
Adam.
Yeah, you weren't feeling the greatest with when you were on the tribe with them originally, but you felt better over the course of the swap tribe.
Right. So of course, when you go into a swap with numbers, and instantly people are like, okay, we're going to stay strong. So I was very willing to agree to that while exploring other options. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to agree, but I'm going to also see what else is going on. And I don't think that information would be that shocking to anyone. Like, I think that they all kind of maybe saw that, but I was definitely willing to see what was going on. And I was someone who went into that squad very, very aware of like Amber, Taylor, and Reynolds' relationship. So although it looks like it was like what 4-3-2, is that the
4-3-2.
numbers? 4-3-2. I knew that wasn't the real numbers because Taylor was going to swing with the Blues. She was going to go with Reynolds and Amber. So I knew numbers existed there as well. So I was trying to kind of, ideally we weren't going to go to tribal, and I was going to have good relationships with both groups going into merge. And then we had the craziest tribal ever. It felt like at least the craziest first tribal ever. So that didn't happen, but we did win a few times in a row.
So let's talk about Amber Reynolds. You mentioned Reynolds, the person you knew from org, you talk with once a year. Had you known Amber prior to this?
I'm familiar with Amber from orgs. And she was on production my original season, for season 10. So I had met her in person and stuff, and I had seen firsthand in person her relationship with Reynolds specifically and with Taylor. So like I knew that they were close. And I am like Facebook friends with all of them. I saw Taylor and Amber's cruise pictures like a few months prior to this. Like I knew their relationship, and yes, I'd met Amber in person, and I've known of Amber and interacted with her multiple times throughout the last 6-7
what were
years.
your interactions with, I guess I'll put the three together, Taylor, Amber, Reynolds like? What were they saying to you? What were you saying to them?
I wanted to work with them. Because I liked my original tribe, but I just had so much fun with Amber and Reynolds and Taylor. Like they're just fun. So when we swapped into that new
fun
tribe,
is dangerous.
Yes, fun is dangerous, but it's, for me, I was like, they were more conversations and stuff that I would have with my friends in real life. So there was a lot of comfort there because I was like, oh, like these are people that I like genuinely click with in a like real way in this game. So like, I could see myself playing with these people because it's easier to play with people who you can just like sit around and goof off with and like be dumb with. So I knew from the previous year, from when I was in the pre-jury house, that like I could get along with these people. And then when I was on a tribe with them, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm having more fun on this tribe. So maybe that's the direction I want to go in the game, because I do think that the people you have fun with matters when it comes to your game relationships.
Talk to me about Lydia.
Yeah, I was getting along well with Lydia too. I think just the way that the whole Frank thing went down, no one knew what to do with Lydia at that point because she shut down a little bit and wasn't really willing to like even talk when we got back to camp. So she became an easy option to put votes on as well.
And what about Josh? Josh is kind of an odd man out because his entire tribe just tried to vote him out. He played a shot in the dark, and now he's with Amber Reynolds, and so it seems like he was very evidently playing the yellow versus red and blue side.
I didn't go into the game thinking Josh was somebody I was going to work with, but I really enjoyed my conversations on that tribe with Josh, actually, and Josh started to become someone who I would have been willing to work with. At merge, at merge things changed a little bit, but at that point on that tribe, Josh is somebody I would have been willing to work with, and I think Josh is maybe the person who like changed my mind the most based on like how I went into the season versus how I felt about him as the season went on, because I didn't think there was any way I was going to work with Josh when because of the way that our first season went, we didn't really like click. He's one of the people I had like very, very few conversations with. And then he got to like pick the tribe that ultimately like got me out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like necessarily a grudge holding thing. I just didn't feel like we were gonna be on the same page necessarily.
Adam Steer would like your autograph too, by the way.
Oh, I'll mail it.
Yeah. I want to talk about your relationship with Adam a little bit more on the swap drive, because Adam, I think he had this kind of metaphor of a business, and you were in his business hierarchy as an important person that he was putting a lot of weight and trust into, it seems.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I was so weary of Adam for days. Like even after the swap, it took days for me to like understand, like believe Adam. I thought Adam was so pleasant to be around and so fun that I just didn't believe he was being genuine. Um, so it took multiple days for me to like really be sold. And Adam is somebody who I did not want to see go on our swap tribe, even when I had decided that I was probably going to jump ship and work with Reynolds and Amber. And I told Reynolds, I was like, I'm working with you guys, like I'm jumping ship, like this is what's going to happen. But I don't really want my original tribe mates to know that yet. Like I want to just hang out here in the safe middle zone for as long as I can. Because I wanted to comfort Reynolds and the people he was working with and let them know that like, hey, like you guys don't need to freak out, like you're gonna have the numbers, because I wanted to avoid something like what happened happening. So I wanted them to like feel very calmed in the fact that they had the numbers, even though that didn't work. But I didn't want everyone to know that yet, because I didn't see how that would benefit me. But as far as like a hierarchy there, Brent was who I was closest working with. That was the other thing. I really wanted to work with Reynolds in that side, but I wanted Brent to come with me. And we were getting so close to merge because we kept winning. I wanted Adam to for sure get there too.
So if you do go the dark side of Amber Reynolds, and you have to turn on your original tribe members, would Todd have been the target then?
Yes.
Okay. And was Todd a name, when you eventually do go tribal council, is Todd a name that's getting thrown out then, or it's...
No, because of what had happened at the challenge when we got there and saw that Frank was gone. So that's when like everything went wild.
So let's fast forward a bit. So you win the next 3 challenges in a row. Do you want to talk about those challenges at all? Was there anything memorable to them for you?
No.
Yeah. So you win the 3 challenges. May, Corey, and then Frank go home. What were your thoughts, at least when you first see May and Corey go home? Corey being the first member of your original tribe.
Corey wasn't surprising to me. May, when Skylar, because Skylar and May were on the same tribe, right?
Yeah.
I knew that there was no way both of them were going to survive that situation. I would have been shocked and very impressed had they survived that, because everybody knew that they were like best friends. So it would have been crazy had they made it through that. So that wasn't surprising to me. Frank, given what I had been hearing about his positioning on the blue tribe, was shocking to me that he was gone, but the reaction from my tribe when we saw he was gone was one of the most surprising things that I have ever experienced in a game.
So you already said kind of from the red camp, you could hear there being shouts from tribal council, and so you had a feeling that Skylar's shot in the dark worked. You're walking to the challenge and you can see Frank's stuff, I believe. Yeah.
We saw his staff and I believe his boots maybe outside the house.
And so talk to me like what happens when you arrive at the tribe, the challenge site, and you see that other tribe come out with Frank gone.
We saw the stuff and we were like, oh, Frank's gone. I was just like shocked, and I was like, man, like Survivor, like Reelfoot is crazy. It's fun. It's wild. Things change so fast. That was not, I think that was the reaction from all of us who came from Original Yellow. We were like, wow, crazy. Then we turn around and Lydia is like sitting on the ground and she's very visibly emotional. And Amber begins to just get worked up. She's angry. So we have someone like crying and someone yelling, and we're like, oh, this is crazier than we thought. And for me, like I said, someone who would vote out their mother, like it was confusing for me personally. Like, what is going on? Like, I was shocked. It didn't make sense to me, and I think I'm just, like, not a very emotional player in that way, and I'm a great compartmentalizer. Like, because of my work, like, I have to go into situations that are, like, the most devastating thing you can imagine and be empathetic and compassionate, but not be emotional about it. So, I don't step into a game like I step into the game like this with the same idea where it's like I can be empathetic to people, but I'm not emotional about any of the decisions that are made or things that are going down. So to see actual emotional reactions was shocking to me.
Because I feel like had, let's say Skylar goes out, not Frank, you still lose the challenge. Things probably go very differently at this next tribal council for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have had to pick a side, and I would have had to show my cards, and people probably would have ended up mad at me at some point too. It just would have looked a lot different.
So why was this tribal council one where you didn't have to show your cards then?
Because Reynolds and Amber would not tell me what was going on.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to work with them, and I had been very upfront with them for the last couple days that, like, I was leaving my original tribe and willing to vote with them, and I think they were being cautious, and rightfully so, because I wanted to come work with them and have Brent along for the ride, and that was not something Amber was willing to do, and she didn't wanna tell me that. She wanted to target Brent, and so they really were not just, like, leaving me out, they were completely leaving me out. They weren't giving me any name at all, which I didn't think that they were coming after me, but when you're not giving me any name, it's like, "Okay, you're giving me no options here but to not work with you. Like, what am I supposed to do if you won't tell me anything?"
Gotcha.
So they did not tell me one single name going into that.
So you lose the challenge. This is the basketball challenge that involves running out, collecting rocks as well. Were you competing? Were you sitting out for that?
I ran for that, but we didn't even get close to the point. I ran for it, and I was going to be the person in the water rebounding the ball, because we had to make very last minute switches on who was doing what after the who ended up sitting out was different than what we planned and things based on the reaction when Frank was gone.
So talk me through the strategy as you go back to camp. It's probably very, very, like you said, it's going to be very different from what you originally thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well, on the way back to camp, I didn't know what was going to happen yet because I still wanted to like have these conversations, and I thought maybe we could come up with something. But Amber was threatening to quit, so that was confusing, and Lydia was crying and not talking game, like she didn't want to talk to anybody. So then we're like, okay, well, is Amber quitting? Like what is Lydia doing? It's hard to come up with a plan with when the people you are supposed to be coming up with a plan with are not actively able to do that. So like Lydia wasn't necessarily somebody who I had really talked game with, but I knew that we were probably going to be voting together based on the side that I was planning to take. So the fact that she was out of I'll say like out of commission for that period, and Amber was so mad and not really talking game either until a little bit later on, and Reynolds was not telling me anything. And Taylor was acting confused, which like Taylor's not someone who strikes me as a gamer who gets confused very often. So I'm like, this doesn't feel real either. I didn't know what was going on. So I had no choice but to say, okay, I'm going to vote with this group of 4, like the original yellows, because at least there's numbers here. And I know they're willing to talk game and to say names and to do something. So I kind of had to swing back that way. And I was talking to Josh. It was really a lot of chaos and confusion about like what are Amber and Reynolds doing, I think was the main question that everybody had.
So how does the vote end up centering on Lydia? Because you, Todd, and Adam will vote Lydia, and then Josh and Brent vote Amber, and the other 4 will vote Brent. So how did you decide to have a split vote on what seems like Lydia and Amber?
Yeah, so we couldn't really believe that Amber was going to quit, because if she was going to quit, she would have just done it at tribal. Yeah. So we're like, okay, so has to be some sort of ploy, and there has to be some sort of idol or something that's about to be played. And so that's how we ended up splitting the vote.
And was Taylor supposed to be part of that split vote?
Yes. We included her in on it. It didn't really matter if Taylor did it, because we didn't really understand what Taylor was doing either. So.
And did you know that Brent was being targeted?
No, that was a shock to me.
Okay. And so talk me through that tribal council once you arrive.
I remember at one point Taylor and Reynolds stood up, and so I was like, oh, we're standing up. So I walked over there and inserted myself in that conversation, because I was like, no, like you've been telling me for days now, well, at least what felt like days, rounds now, that we are working together. Yeah, like that we are working together. So if you're having a conversation about this vote, then I should be able to walk in and be a part of it, especially because they had not given me a name. And I'm trying to remember the name that they gave me. I wish I could remember. I cannot. But at one point, I remember we were sitting there, and Adam. It was Adam. So I remember I turned around at one point too, and I said, Reynolds, who are you voting for? And Adam was sitting in front of him, and he looked at Adam, and I said, no, you're not. Like, I don't believe you. Like, I don't know what's going on. And it was, for me, just confusion, because nobody was telling me what was going on.
So you're kind of forced to say, well, I'm going to stick with the original yellow plan and see what happens.
Right. And it was frustrating for me more than anything, because I was genuine about wanting to work with them. And I thought that maybe that could have been handled better, even once I figured out what they were doing. Like, it didn't end up mattering in the end, because I went back to Amber and Reynolds, but it was very frustrating, and I did not think I was going back to them until it happened.
So Amber plays her idol for Reynolds. Were you surprised by
that? No, because it had been so crazy that, like, we split the votes because we assumed that there was some sort of craziness involving an idol about to go down.
And then Brent plays his idol for himself.
So that shocked me. I didn't know Brent had an idol. And I think that vote and the way that all of that went down solidified, like, my closeness with Brent. It made us even closer. And that's when, like, Brent became my number one person in the game.
And so Lydia goes out in a 3-2 vote, with Amber catching the other 2 votes. In retrospect, was Lydia the correct person to vote out here?
Maybe not the correct person, because we didn't know what Taylor was doing. Like, I think Taylor might have been a better option if we had known for sure. But even knowing, like I said, I was blinded to the fact that outside relationships were going to matter so much in this game. And I think that was, like, my first wake up call to, like, oh, these people are going to pick their friends and ride for their friends no matter what. So I guess I needed to see that. So I'm glad that happened before merge for me. But I mean, as far as game wise, Taylor might have been a better option then, but maybe not, because she ended up, you know what I mean, the way she left anyways. Like, it was like, Lydia Gaughan's one less person that I have to beat. So
what was the aftermath from this tribal council afterwards?
I just remember we go back to camp. The 4 of us from original yellow, like, feel fine, like, feel good about what happened. Amber and Reynolds are proud of themselves. They're happy. Taylor, like, cried, and she was, like, not sitting with them, and I felt bad for her. I was like, damn, like, you good? Like, you okay? I feel like she kind of screwed herself over staying loyal to them in that vote in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very tense at camp after that. It was uncomfortable, I would say. Uncomfortable is the best word for it.
How far did you think that it would, how long do you think it would take before the merge would happen? Were you projecting like, hey, we're at 14, merge is going to be a vote away?
Yeah, I think we knew it was, we had a feeling it was coming. I had a feeling it was coming.
So how was that night? Because I heard some of the nights got pretty cold out there.
Yeah, they were cold. Was it that night or the night? One of the nights we all just ended up like sitting at the fire pretty much all night because it was so brutally cold. But I don't remember if I think it might have been the night before. I think that night was a little bit less cold, so we were able to like lay down. But the night before was freezing.
So the next day, you learn that you have to earn the merge, and you all be competing in 3 different challenges: a memory, a dexterity, or an endurance challenge. And the winners will go to merge, and the 7 losers will go to one more tribal council. When you heard that one of the options was memory, what was your reaction?
I was thrilled because I didn't think that a lot of people were going to pick memory. And then I ended up drawing number 1, so I was the first to get to pick. So once I drew number 1, I knew that I was making merge. Like I didn't have any doubt in my mind that I was getting to merge at that point.
Who are you competing against in this challenge?
It was me, Skylar, Adam. Ooh, let me look. I don't remember who the other person was.
I don't think, I think Carlos did endurance. I don't remember what Megan did.
Yeah.
Amber, was it Amber Reynolds in your group? I know they threw.
Oh, it was Amber, I think.
Okay.
I think it was me, Skylar, Amber, and Adam, but I'm not. It was Amber because I remember when we were waiting, we were all talking about what went on the night before, and it was kind of uncomfortable because it was like me, Adam, Amber, who already knew what happened, and then Skylar, and obviously Adam, Amber, and I all had like very different perspectives on what had happened.
Well, how does this challenge go for you?
Oh, it ended very quickly, and it went good. I got through. I knew I was going to get through. My concern really, once I knew what was going on, was like who else was going to make it through.
Yeah.
I was worried. I was worried for Brent, and rightfully so.
So do you wish you had thrown the challenge? Because Amber Reynolds, Taylor, and Carlos kind of all threw to control the majority at that tribal council. Is that something you wish you had tried to counter throw if you had thought about that?
No, my vote wouldn't have mattered. And no, I can't regret really anything like that because you know what I mean, I got 4th place. Yeah. So
well, how was your time at the Winners Lounge with the other 6 people? Because you're joined by Austin, Todd, Tony, and Josh, Sharif and Josh, yeah.
So I had like my first conversation with Austin then, and I really liked Austin at that conversation, and I knew Brent was going to be the one leaving. Like I said it when we got to the Winners Lounge, I was like, oh, it's going to be Brent. Like I'm telling you right now, based on those numbers, that's pretty much the only option that I could see it being. And somebody was like, no, I think it's going to be. Sharif thought it was going to be someone else. I can't remember who he thought it was going to be. And I was like, no, that's not it. It's going to be Brent. And I was right about that. So it did give me an opportunity to be like, oh, hey guys, like my number 1 ally is about to leave the game. So like, that's not really necessarily a horrible position to be in either, to be like, hey, like I'm kind of starting on like a fresh slate here. I just left like a crazy tribal council where I voted differently than all of these people I was just with. And then now one of the people who I did vote with, who I was close to, is leaving. So like I'm a person who's an option. to like scoop up right now. And I was looking for numbers and seeing where other people were at.
Well, so like you said, Brent is voted out. It's a 3-2-2 vote, which seems close on paper until you kind of look to see until you talk to people and kind of figure out where things were going. But Brent goes home, as you expected, and the merge has officially begun. Talk to me about the merge feast.
The merge feast, I had a salad, and I didn't find any clues, but I guess Taylor found the clue, is what it seemed like. Taylor or Reynolds, but I think Taylor found the clue, and no.
Megan hands the clue in a sandwich to Sharif that Taylor sees that happen.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. So he hands the clue, and Taylor sees it, and that creates some sort of drama between Sharif and Taylor. Sharif is mad that Taylor saw him get the clue, which like in hindsight is like such a funny thing to be mad about, that like you got caught, like, and people are respond to like being mad that Taylor's telling people that Sharif has the clue, when really like we should be happy that Taylor's telling people that Sharif has a clue. It's like, it's funny now, but that, I think because of what had happened the night before and the vote that just happened, where when you looked at those numbers, Taylor again told people that she was voting with them to make the split work and then didn't do it. And so people were really mad going into merge at specifically Taylor, Amber, and Reynolds. So any attention brought to them, or like anything that they could have done, was going to be taken negatively at that point. Like there wasn't a lot that they could have done where people wouldn't have been like, oh, like they're being sneaky, or like they're being, I don't know what the correct words would be, but there was not a lot they could have done. They were working with pretty much nothing.
So there's some players you're meeting kind of for the first time really at this merge. Talk to me about Sharif. What was your impression of him? Like, what have you heard about him going into the merge?
Well, Sharif is someone that I played with the previous season, so like I knew Sharif. And I had started to create a good relationship with Josh, and Josh kept saying like, oh, like and Josh and I voted together at the previous vote as well. And I thought that Josh and Sharif would probably work together. And Josh had been telling me that he was going to meet up with Sharif and work together. And then Sharif and I have a conversation where Sharif is like telling me he wants to work with me, and that like we're going to like kind of keep that in the down low though, and work together, and that we can play together. And I genuinely believed that. I believed him when he said that, and I wanted to work with Sharif, and that was definitely at that point an option that I was holding on to. And like I said, I was looking for numbers and looking for a place to slide in. And when Sharif and I had that conversation, I was willing to work with Sharif. Things didn't shake out that way, but when I had that conversation with him, I was willing to do that.
You also meet Tony, who I don't think you had a chance to meet before because he wasn't a handler in your season.
No, I'd never met Tony before. I knew that Tony and Brent had like played together before, and then Tony just told me about like how close he and Brent were, which like I knew they were close, but so that also was something I tried to kind of use as a way to get in with Tony too. But Tony also says a lot of words when he talks, and I wasn't sure if that was like, he was a little more paranoid, maybe is the right way to describe it, than what I felt comfortable with. So I was keeping it open.
Keep going. Taylor has a compliment for your game I'll get to afterwards. I brought it up a moment too soon.
Oh, okay. I was like keeping it as an option open. I was open to anybody, but Tony almost immediately struck me as paranoid. Just the first conversation we had. I can't remember what he said off the bat, but immediately I was like, dude, like I haven't heard anything negative about you, and you're already like, you're scaring me a little bit. So I didn't necessarily foresee that as being an option unless it had to be.
Mm-hmm. Taylor's a comment where she says the way that you watch her and Reynolds tank their games was so good.
I couldn't really do anything at that. Like, you guys wouldn't give me information, so I would have worked with you. But then, I wasn't gonna say anything when people were mad at you either. I was just gonna be like, yeah, be mad at them. Don't look at me.
You mentioned that Carlos ran the first org you ever played, but had you ever met him in person prior to the season?
Yes, actually. Okay. We went to an org meetup at the same time I met Reynolds in person for the first time.
Okay.
Years ago, 4th of July, 2018, I want to say.
It'd been a bit.
It'd been a bit. Carlos was, yes, we were young. It was a long time ago.
So what was it like actually playing with Carlos on the same tribe?
Carlos is very impressive. Carlos is so smart, and he's someone who it takes you a minute to catch on to just how actively playing Carlos is and like how intelligent he is. I don't think, like, he's smart because he like talks about school and stuff, and but Carlos is kind of like goofy. Like, he does goofy things. He wakes up screaming because he thinks there's a spider on him. Like, he's very disarming, I think is a good word. Like, Carlos is not intimidating when you are just hanging out with him or at camp with him. And then you realize that Carlos is very sneaky and very capable, and Carlos is very impressive as a player. And yeah, I think Carlos, is maybe the person I think played the best this season, like that I was most impressed by. And I think he played a game that I couldn't have played, and I thought it was really impressive.
Now, Austin, you said you meet for the first time in kind of the winner's lounge. At what point in the merge do you really start to have a stronger alliance with them?
With Austin, yeah. So Sharif had won immunity, and I can't remember who the second person who won immunity was. It was the one where I almost took my eye out with the slingshot.
Austin and Sharif won that immunity at Final 11.
Okay, so Final 11, yes. So, and Josh had just left. So the reason that Josh had just left. So Sharif and I had these conversations about wanting to work together, and like when we decided that Josh was going to be something that we were open to and are going to go for, we really had conversations about us working together. And I do think he was genuine, but I'm standing under the canopy. He's getting his picture and stuff taken, but then he starts to come back, and I see everybody swarm towards Sharif and start to have conversations. And I'm standing and over here, and it's me just standing here, Amber and Reynolds standing off together, and then Skylar standing there. And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, all of these people are having conversations, and the four of us aren't. And I'm like, that's concerning to me. So I walk up to Sharif, and he's talking to Tony.
Ooh, you just got muted.
I think my headphones died, but they're plugged in.
Weird. They sound good now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, let me just take them out.
I can hear you fine. So you see everyone swarm towards Sharif. You look, you see Skylar, Amber and Reynolds alone, and then you go back up to Sharif, who's talking to Tony.
And Tony's exact words are, he says to me that he says, "Can I have a minute?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And he's like, "I'm not gonna talk until you leave." And so I was mad. I'm seeing red at that point. I walk away pissed off, and I had just had conversations with Sharif, and we were planning to work together moving forward. So it wasn't really his fault that Tony said that, but the fact that Tony, to me, like I said, I didn't know Tony that great at that point. the fact that he felt comfortable saying that to me in front of Sharif and Sharif saying nothing, I was like, okay, well, you clearly have people you are working with that are not me, that are going to have a say in what goes on. And so I'm not going to be on the bottom again, because I had played the previous season with Sharif and saw what it was like to play on a tribe where Sharif had his people and then other people just kind of on the outside hoping it's not them. And I was like, there's no way. Everybody wants to work with Sharif. And if everybody wants to work with Sharif, I'm not going to be down low. So I don't do anything for real yet, though. So I start having conversations with Megan, and I'm like, who do you want? And we're talking, and I don't know. I don't exactly remember what it was. I throw out the name Todd because I wanted to see what's going to happen. So I throw out the name Todd, and it pretty much instantly comes back that it's not going to be Todd. So I was like, like that's weird that I can't, like, clearly Megan isn't interested in working with me either. I was mostly just testing that out to see what would happen. So like, Megan's not going to work with me either. So then I go and have a conversation with Sharif, and he basically says the thing that like sealed the deal for me. He said, we need to get through these next few votes. And then he said something along the lines of like final 6, then we'll start like really working together. So I'm like, we're at final 11. You want me to sit here, just sit on my hands and do nothing, be a part of nothing, while you save me and drag me along to final 6? Oh, because he said he was gonna need help cutting his allies later on, like help cutting other people. Like, I don't know if he meant it that way, but the way it was worded and the way I took it was, you want me to have no say in this game until final 6, and then help you cut your allies to help you win. And I was like, that's not an option for me. Like, I didn't come here to do nothing. So at that point, I walk away. Austin's coming around the corner, and and Sharif had told me Skylar. So at that point, the vote was Skylar. And I looked at Austin and I was like, do you want to vote out Skylar? Because I don't want to vote out Skylar. And he said, no. And I said, okay, who are we voting out? And we would look at each other and we're like, Adam. So we both decide Adam. And that's when that goes down. So I go over to Amber and Reynolds and I said, we need you. I was like, they're going to vote Skylar, or they're going to vote Skylar or Reynolds. Like, that's who they were going back and forth between. And I was like, let's do Adam. And before the tribal, when Josh left, I had came to Reynolds and I did say to him, I'm not voting for you. You're not the vote. Don't waste your shot in the dark, or any idols you have. Like, you're not going to be the vote. Because I was already starting to just realize where kind of the lines were going to end up on that merge tribe, and realizing even though Amber and Reynolds really just pissed me off, I might still need them. So I was trying to like extend an olive branch to Reynolds because I trusted Reynolds more than Amber. I was trying to already kind of bridge that gap a little bit. And then when that happened and I saw what was going on under, like, with all those conversations before tribal, and they were pointing it out too. And I was like, yeah, I see it. I'm not blind. Like, I'm not stupid. I get it. And that's when it really became me, Skylar, Austin, Amber, and Reynolds. And then Skylar ended up leaving the next round. So that's when I got close with Austin, though. When that happened.
So for that first merge tribe, when you have 13 players, you have that first immunity challenge where you're stacking up the blocks and holding on to it. And this is where Josh and Todd win immunity. Did you have someone you wanted to see go out as the merge view, or were you being told a name prior to the Taylor Tribal Council?
I think Taylor might have been in trouble that time too. I think in my mind, especially because she did so well in that challenge. So people were already scared of her because of the challenge thing. People were already mad at her because of what had just happened the last 2 tribals. So I think Amber, Reynolds, and Taylor were already on the chopping block. One of them was probably going to be targeted for sure. I think that tribal. And so Taylor leaving did save Amber and Reynolds. And then speaking for myself, at least, there's no way that I would have worked with Amber and Reynolds when I did if Taylor was still there as well. Like I might have worked with another combination of two of those three, but with the three of them together after what I had just experienced, there was no way that I was going to try and come in as a fourth. I needed one of them to go in order to be willing to work with the other two.
So Taylor is voted of the game because of a life emergency that comes into play. The vote's unanimous, minus one vote is cast for Skylar. What did you think of that?
I thought it was somebody clearly trying to like stir up trouble and be annoying.
It worked.
It did. It definitely worked.
And so that night, you're at the merge drive. There's 12 players. What did the lay of the land look like? How did you view the merge shaking out at that point?
I think Skylar had already been like on the outs on her last drive, and so she was not like in the best place, and she was one of the only people who was not very much actively shunning Amber, Taylor, and Reynolds. So people were weary of Skylar at that point because of that. I'm trying to think what else. Sharif, I could tell Sharif and Megan were going to work together. I could see Todd like wanting to work with Sharif so bad. Like foaming at the mouth for the opportunity to like throw it up together. So like that was very apparent. Wick on. Tony and Sharif had been on a tribe together, so I foresaw them maybe working together. So it felt like a lot of people wanting to work with Sharif.
It's a theme of the season.
Yeah, and then Reynolds, Amber, Skylar kind of on the outs, and me not knowing where the heck I'm at. Trying to like decide, like trying to worm my way into like the Sharif army, but also not loving that option either, because where do I stand in that group? That's why I did what I did. Like I said, like I wasn't gonna be at the bottom of the numbers.
So night 5, 12 people left the game. Who was most important for your game at this point?
Myself.
Carley, number 1.
Yeah. This is before the Adam vote out?
Before the Josh vote out.
Oh, before the Josh vote out. Yes. Yeah. Who was most important for my game? I didn't know, because I wanted Sharif to stay because I liked the option of having a route to go down there. But I was looking for a home at that point.
So the next morning, you have the immunity challenge where you get to guess the items in the jars. But you could also sit out and if enough people sat out, the whole tribe got food. What did you choose?
I played, and I might as well have sat out. So I was the first person out. So,
so memory, yes. Counting object in jars, no.
No. Math, no. And I know that there's a formula to do that, and I kind of remembered the formula, and I even did the math in the corner and got almost like very close to the correct answer, and looked at it and said that's not correct, and wrote a much smaller number by like hundreds smaller and got out. So
it was a lesson learned.
Yeah, the lesson learned is just trust your gut, and I'm not good at math.
So what does the scramble for the next tribal council look like? This is going to be the Josh vote.
Oh, okay. So the Josh vote, gosh, I remember, I think at least my perspective on it is Josh told me, for me personally, Josh told me something that morning, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it felt like he was planting a seed that I was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more I talked to people, the more that didn't seem to be the case. Mm-hmm. So I was like, is Josh purposefully feeding me incorrect information to like make, I don't know what, to make me paranoid, to keep me voting with him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is his reasoning for this? And so that made me not trust Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a feeling that Sharif was starting to be scared. But people were automatically assuming that he was going to work with Josh because of their history.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't going to be good for his game.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say maybe Skylar was the first person to bring up Josh to me. And Skylar and Megan at one point came to me about it. And I was on board because I didn't trust Josh's information anymore, because he had told me, I wish I could remember exactly what he had told me, but it just didn't feel right to me. And then when I found out like Sharif would be on board, I figured that Sharif's army would also be on board if Sharif was on board. So then it felt like the right call to save me from standing out that vote, or from being in trouble. Anyone but me was kind of my priority at that point, because I didn't feel safe in any sort of numbers.
Did you know that Austin was being left out of the vote on purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so Tribal Council, Josh is voted out nearly unanimously, with Austin casting a vote towards, let's see, does he vote for Amber Reynolds? He votes for Amber, Josh votes for Reynolds, everyone else votes for Josh. Josh goes home 10-1-1.
Yeah. And like I said, I had gone to Reynolds earlier and like told him that he was fine too. So I was starting to like to play out any options that I had, just to kind of see where I was going to end up.
So you next have the slingshot challenge, which you said was a bit of a dangerous challenge for you.
Yeah, they kept saying that I was going to take my eye out. I didn't know how to shoot a slingshot. I was just doing what felt natural, which was near death. So
this challenge ends up going to Sharif and to Austin. Now, I think when the madness of the scramble is that you don't go back to camp, you go behind the barn or something like that.
Yes.
For the scramble. I don't think you have a ton of time, right?
No, we didn't have a ton of time.
So walk me through, because this ends up being one of the most pivotal votes of the season that really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And you kind of alluded to already how this went down.
Yeah, I mostly explained it. It ended up being me, Amber, Reynolds, and then eventually Skylar standing in the shade under the barn while everyone else was in two little groups talking. And I tried to join in that conversation, and Tony told me to leave.
Oh, okay. That would do it.
Yeah, and he specifically said the words that he was not going to keep talking until I left. So then I'm like, huh, okay. So I walk back over to near where Amber and Reynolds are standing, and Amber's like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? And I'm like, no, yeah, I know. I hear you. I'm seeing this. I understand. And then I just remember I talked to Megan and said Todd. Me, Skylar, and Megan were talking, and we ended that conversation saying Todd. And then Megan or somebody came back and was like, no, it's not Todd. Somebody told me Skylar. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do Skylar. And then I think Megan's name come up. And then Megan knew her name had came up. Oh, yes, this is what happened. So they told me Skylar. So Austin, I have that conversation with Sharif where he tells me to wait till like final 6. And I'm like, okay. But in my head, I'm like, screw you. Like, I'm not doing that. Right after that, Austin and I bump into each other, and I said, I'm hearing Skylar. Are you hearing Skylar? And he's like, yeah. And I said, is that good for you? Because it's not good for me. And he's like, no, let's not do that. Let's try and come up with something else. And I was like, well, Amber and Reynolds are going to do anything to save themselves. So me, you, Amber, Reynolds, Skylar, we would need one more vote. Who I was like, I'll try and get Adam. So we decide on Megan as the name. I go and tell Adam, and Megan knows within less than 60 seconds. So that's when the name gets switched to Adam. I go to walk over to Austin and say, like, Megan knows it's not her, and like, it's not going to be Megan. And so he's like, can we do Adam? Do you want to do Adam? And I was like, yes. I would never have said Adam that round, because Adam was in for me, like someone that I felt comfortable with. I forgot to mention Adam earlier. Adam was somebody who I thought that there was a lot of potential with, to work with. And I had just told him Megan, and Megan knew 60 seconds later, and I didn't know where else it would have came from. So I was mad at Adam then, and I was like, well, I don't trust you now. So that's how I agreed to Adam. So I think it was like Austin and I meeting. Austin had just been left out of that vote. I felt like I was being left out of things. We met at that moment, and really Skylar, Amber, and Reynolds had no other choices. So me and Austin deciding to work together is what started the 5 of us, I would say, like, working together at that point.
Why not vote Tony?
A good question. I didn't feel like necessary to me. Like, I would have voted Tony if that had been the name, but Megan felt like a better option because of her closeness to Sharif. So I wanted her originally. And then when that wasn't going to happen, and she already knew, and we were like, what about idols, things like that, we decided on Adam.
Did you know that your alliance had idols? Your new alliance with Amber Reynolds had idols?
No. Yes, actually, no, I didn't. And so when even the 5 of us decided to vote together, that wasn't going to be enough votes. Yeah. It was going to tie. Correct?
It was, you were down. It was because there were 6 people on the other side than your side, right?
Down. So we were hoping that there would be enough confusion, maybe that something would happen. And also we were just out of time. They said they called time to vote, and like we didn't. There was no other option. So I was like, man, I could just vote with them and vote Skylar. And I was like, but that doesn't feel right to me. And like, I might as well try something, anything. And thankfully, they had that idol.
Well, it ends up being a bit of a live tribal council, right?
Yes.
I want to say so. So Reynolds goes and he plays the idol successfully for himself, negating 5 votes. Your 5 votes go for Adam, and there's one, and Tony votes for Skylar. So Adam goes home in a 5-1.
Right.
Talk to me about the aftermath from the tribal council.
That changed the whole entire game. I went from feeling like I had no home in the game, nowhere to go, and was just trying to worm my way in somewhere, or just like anybody but me through the game, to the game clearly having a set division, 2 sides, 5 and 5. So it really just like cracked the whole thing open and just created 2 very distinct sides that moved through. That really just, that's how the rest of the merge for the most part until the end kind of went.
So I think you like the next challenge. This is the beanbag toss challenge.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
Talk to me about it.
I won. Like I said, the first time I played, I was so unlucky. This time I had a lot more luck on my side. Like, I got to pick first in the challenge to get yourself into merge, so I got to do the memory one. And then this time I picked last. Like, I picked the last number, so I got to go last in the challenge, which was a huge benefit because I was able to calculate everyone's scores as I went, and then I knew what I needed to get in order to move further. So I knew basically that if I landed on the closest table every time, like by the end of the first round, I knew if I landed on the closest table every single time, then I would probably win. So that was my strategy. I just went for the closest table every single time to try to rack up as many points as possible. And then I won.
So you and Reynolds both win immunity.
Yeah.
Which really matters because how much is a rock draw being talked about after this challenge?
It's being discussed a lot. We weren't sure though if the other side would be willing to go to rocks for each other or not though. And there's obviously so many talks of idols still.
Yeah. So after this challenge, there's a mad scramble back to camp, the hunt for the idol.
Yes, sprinting back. That whole day was a lot of sprinting back and forth. Truly, that was one of the most fun days I've ever had, like ever. It was so much fun. Like just the back and forth of the two sides, the sprinting back to camp to find idols, like the way the tribals were going down. It was like very much exhilarating. And being safe that round was a relief for sure.
Did you know that Megan had found the idol?
I don't believe so. I don't remember, honestly. I think we thought they had to have had it, though. I think we knew they had it or assumed they had it. But we didn't know if they would. I don't remember if I knew Megan had it. I think we knew that they had it, but I wasn't sure if they would be willing to play it on each other.
So talk me through the strategy of the scramble. Like, what were you trying to do or accomplish?
Who did we vote that round? I can't even remember.
So it ends up being a 5-5 on Skylar and Todd. Megan plays the idol for Todd. Skylar goes home.
Yeah. Okay. So, honestly, for the next few rounds, the real strategy of it all is just trying to take out someone from their side and keep our numbers intact. And we didn't think Todd had the idol, and we knew that I knew, and I think we all kind of assumed that Megan would be most willing if she had the idol to play it on Sharif, and potentially vice versa. So I think that's how we ended up on Todd as the vote.
You mentioned at the start of the podcast that you were well aware that Amber Reynolds, Taylor, and Carlos were all connected.
Yeah.
How surprised were you watching this, seeing Carlos on the opposite side of Amber Reynolds?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember specifically when I realized that Carlos was a double agent. And it was not that round. I think it was the next round, maybe when Skylar left. Maybe? Or was it that round?
Or when Sharif goes out, it becomes more apparent.
It was apparent to me when Sharif left, but at some point I realized it. I think I realized it just a little bit before other people started to realize it, because because I was so aware of their relationship, and I remember Amber said something to me. I can't remember what she said, but she said something to me back at the shelter that I was like, oh, like Carlos she's gonna be fine. Like Carlos is not gonna let her go. But like I said earlier, I wasn't aware that people were going to keep their like friendships above everything else so much. And like I had learned that Taylor, Amber, and Reynolds were going to do that, but I didn't know yet that Carlos was going to do that as well. I mean, I thought maybe like Carlos is not going to want Amber and Reynolds to go, but then when everything was shaking out the way it did, I was like, Carlos is going to protect himself, right? Like over everyone else. And it did feel like even later on, there was like some dilemma for Carlos about like, do I take care of myself or do I watch out for my friends? So yeah, he did a good job at being a double agent. I think it took a minute to realize it.
When you're at this kind of 5-5 standoff, are you having a lot of communication on the other side, or are things kind of shutting down between you and the other side of Sharif, Tony, Megan? Trying to remember who else. Sharif, Tony, Megan, Carlos, and Todd.
I mean, there's some communication, but it's like pretty apparent what just went down. And I don't feel like people are mad at. Well, Sharif was mad. I don't think people were necessarily like mad at me as much as they were Amber Reynolds. Like they were still, I think, going to catch most of the heat. But later on, as it plays out, as people are unable to get Amber and Reynolds out for whatever reason, that's when I started feeling afraid. But at that point, communication, it was very much divided. Like I think people were so just mad at Amber and Reynolds that they still had like positive outlooks on Austin and Skylar and I, or especially Austin and I, that like if things didn't work out for us later on, we might be able to still have options over there where I don't think Amber and Reynolds did, but I don't know.
In this round, Austin tries to bring in Tony to flip and vote with your side.
Yeah.
But it doesn't end up going very well.
It doesn't work, yeah.
So at Tribal Council, Megan gets up, plays the idol successfully for Todd, kind of naming her alliance, saying, hey, us 5 sticking together. And Todd is safe, and therefore Skylar goes out with 5 votes.
Yeah. That's okay. So Austin, I think, felt really guilty about Skylar going then because he thought it was 100% his fault for trying to pull in Tony, but like not thinking about not knowing the Carlos of it all. Like it wasn't just Austin who kind of made that plan fail because Carlos was involved too. But that was a loss, obviously, and that sucked, but it wasn't over yet because of the way that the next tribal, tribal was so fun.
Yeah, so you have the next challenge where you have to like stack up those like birdies on a plate while balancing it. Megan wins for the women, Todd wins for the men. And then so your alliance is now down, the number is 4 people to 5. What do you do at camp after this challenge?
There was running again. There was idol hunting again. And Amber tells me that she has an idol that she's willing to use on me. That's okay. So this is when I knew for sure that Carlos was a double agent because they knew that the vote was going to be me. And Carlos, I think, told me the vote was going to be me. But after Amber had already told me and kind of insinuated that Carlos had told her. I don't think Carlos's side knew yet that he was leaking information. But that's when I learned that Carlos was leaking information. And Amber uses the idol on me. Like she tells me she's going to use it on me. So it's a Hail Mary. Like there's obviously fear from me that she's not going to actually do it. But I had a feeling she would. But before she did it, I told her, I said, let me play my shot in the dark first because we're running out of time to play the shot in the dark. And I wanted her to hold on to the idol in case. So I play my shot in the dark. It doesn't work. And then Amber played the idol.
Was Sharif the correct person to idol out here?
Absolutely. I think so. I think Sharif was a good person to idol out there because it's just people like Sharif so much that if you sit against Sharif at the end and every single person wanted to play with Sharif, like Sharif gets votes at the end no matter what. Like that would be silly to not take out Sharif at that point in the game when you have the opportunity to.
So this is kind of the end of day 6. You've had some of the wildest 3-round stretch of Survivor I think I've seen in a long time, with the two alliances like directly against each other, successful idol plays 3 times in a row, taking someone out. How are you feeling sitting at the final 8?
I felt great sitting at final 8. But final 8.
So it's you, Austin, Amber, Reynolds, Megan, Todd, Carlos, Tony.
Okay. Yeah, I felt great, but I also felt like that's the point I started to get scared. Because that's the point where I knew that people weren't going to keep shooting and missing at Amber and Reynolds, and I had just got votes for that reason. And I knew my name was going to probably keep coming up for that reason. So I was starting to get scared.
So we mentioned when the previous day, you're like, no, the number 1 player to my game is me, and I don't know anyone else. Who were the most important players to your game at the final 8?
It was back to being me at final 8. At final 7, 6, and 5, it would have been Austin.
Okay.
And Reynolds and Amber. But back at 8, I had to start thinking about me. And so I would say Austin. Austin is the answer. Austin was the most important player to my game at final 8.
Did you see any clear paths to the final 3, or you're just like, man, I don't know how I'm getting there?
Austin and I had started having conversations at this point about wanting to go to the end with Todd. Yes, with Todd. That's what we wanted to do.
It's because it seems like it was interesting because you mentioned like you wanted to vote Megan out. You floated her name at the final 11. Megan's to be a player you're going to be kind of target a lot or want to target as this next day goes by.
As the next phase goes by, even before then though, Megan I knew was tossing out my name a lot. I've heard even after season people were like, Megan wanted you out like every round, and I was like, yeah, I wanted Megan out like every round. And so I think we were both very much on the same page of knowing that we weren't going to work together, that like we were going to actively be in each other's way of getting to the end.
What's fascinating about your original Yellow Tribe is like it seems like you were great for challenges, but it never would have moved forward potentially as like a solid like alliance. Like there were definitely fractures there, even though it seems like a very Yellow dominated game. Yellow was very much against itself.
Yeah, I think once swap occurred, I would have worked with Brent from Yellow, and I would have always worked with Skylar. But other than that,
probably Adam.
Maybe Adam, if things had gone a little differently. Yeah. But like everyone else from Yellow, even if I liked them, we just weren't going to be the same type of game player or game players that could get on the same page and have the same goals. Megan and I were never going to have the same goals because we're just very, very different style players. And so I think that's part of why. And we were actively targeting each other so much throughout the merge. And also I wanted to go to the end with Todd, and she wanted to go to the end with Todd, but I knew Todd wanted to go to the end with her. Todd didn't even know I wanted to go to the end with him. I think the exact words I said to Austin is, let's take Todd to the end. I don't care if we drag him there kicking and screaming. Like, he doesn't even have to want to be there. He's going to be there. So my goal,
go ahead.
My goal was to get Todd to the end with me because I didn't think Todd was going to get the votes at the end.
Do you wish you had more conversations with Todd saying, hey, let's work together, get to the end of each other and try and make that more formal?
It maybe, but like really Megan was, once Sharif had gone, he was so loyal to Megan, and Megan used that idol on him. There was nothing I could have done to make him more loyal to me than he would have been to Megan, because Todd is just like a loyalty type of guy. He's like the first person he gives his word to, that's where his word is. And he's very much like a plays with people he respects kind of guy. And he, not that he like was disrespectful to me. No, that's not what I mean at all. I just mean he didn't respect my game the same way he respected Megan's game or how he ended up respecting Austin's game. I think it's more like he likes people who he sees as like challenge threats, or like I can't remember the wording he always used, but like he just didn't see me in that category. So I wasn't going to be the type of player who he wanted to work with long term at that point anyway.
Austin kind of begins assuming the position Sharif had in that alliance with Megan and Todd. Was that something you were watching happen, or is that something that surprised you as the next day went on?
No, it's something I noticed. And this is the conversation I was talking about Austin and I were having when we were deciding how to handle the Amber vote, where I wished I wasn't sick. Because I was watching, I saw what was happening with Austin, and I didn't have any sort of brain capacity to do anything. And I needed Austin because he was the only number I had then, but I knew I was going to have to cut Austin. It was it felt kind of like I was watching things slip away, and I didn't have the ability to do anything about it because I didn't feel good, but I was trying very hard to like come up with other options. If that makes sense. I don't know.
the next morning starts with the auction. We kind of talked about this. You won some. You had some almonds. You got the Coke, and you also got the onion.
Mm-hmm. Got the onion, and the idol clue was in the onion. My big regret in the game actually is letting Reynolds know that I had the idol clue, because I kept trying to open it at the auction because I wanted to make sure it wasn't near the auction because I needed to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone just kept turning around at like the most inopportune times. So finally I was sitting like behind Reynolds, and I just put it against his back and opened it up against his back and read it. And so he knew at that point there was no way he wasn't going to know.
And so why do you regret that?
Well, when Reynolds got voted out, he stood up and announced to the whole game that I had an idol.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like I was
I don't think he realized he did that.
No, I don't think he realized what the vote had been or what had happened. And I think he was just so mad that he was out that he told everybody that I had an idol and that Carlos had an idol. And I'm like, dude, you just kind of screwed over people who were still kind of with you. I mean, I knew Reynolds was going out and didn't do anything about it. But I didn't actively vote against him because my thought process, and this is what my thought process was when I was having that conversation with Austin, because he was like, should I do it? Should I help them vote Reynolds out? And I was like, yeah. He's like, are you going to be mad if I do that? And I was like, no. And he's like, do you want to join the vote? And I said, I'm going to think about it, but I might not join the vote. And so my whole thought process with not joining the vote was, I know we're not going to tie and go to rocks. These people are not going to let it go to rocks. But if Reynolds leaves now and I don't vote him out, maybe Amber's going to be pissed at people, but hopefully she won't be that pissed at me because I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I send Reynolds to jury not pissed off because I had seen that they're going to be emotional players and I didn't want them to go to jury so pissed off that they wouldn't vote for me at the end.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is hopefully a way to save some face with Amber and Reynolds, and it did not work out that way. I really underestimated just how pissed off they would be about me knowing about it. And yeah, no, that's on me. I underestimated how mad they were going to be.
So what should you have done? What would have been if 2 months later, with a lot of perspective, what was the best route you think you could have taken with this round?
Truthfully, I don't know if there was a better route. I mean, there's obviously the option of telling Austin I don't think you should do it, but I can't even guarantee that he wouldn't have done it if I told him not to. Like that's relying on me to control a whole other person, which is not. He probably still would have voted how he wanted to. So like, let's say he did listen to me and we didn't vote out Amber or Reynolds that round. I was, like I said, this is the point where I was getting scared that I was starting to get shots taken at me because people couldn't get Amber and Reynolds because they kept pulling out idols. So it's like there wasn't like a great option there. So I was like, what's the option that's going to get me through this round and maybe not make Amber and Reynolds so mad at me, but it didn't. Obviously, I miscalculated a little bit.
So is the world where you play an idol for Reynolds, Megan goes out and they immediately turn on Carlos, Amber, Reynolds at the final 7?
Oh, you're saying if I had played my idol, Reynolds? I forgot about that actually. My idol was an option there. Nobody knew about my idol at that point except Amber Reynolds, and I thought that Tony and Carlos might have knew. Carlos saw me grab it, and Tony, I thought, had seen it, but I guess he didn't. I don't know. But I wasn't willing to use my idol on somebody else at that point.
I do want to say, I'd love to hear you tell the story you find the idol, because I've heard other people's perspectives and I find it very entertaining.
Yes. Okay. So Reynolds knows about my idol clue. So I was like, I know where the idol is. Like, I'm going to get it on our way back to camp. So I'm expecting on the walk back to camp for Reynolds to like talk to me and help me come up with a plan to get this thing. Because it was towards the front of the, like, the trail to camp was very long, and it was towards the front of the trail, like, so furthest away from camp. And so I was expecting him to talk to me on the walk to camp to try and help me get this. And he talks to Carlos the entire walk to the trail. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So we're almost to the trail. And I was like, damn it, like, I'm gonna need another person. So I say something to Amber, and I was like, will you cause like a distraction so people leave the front of the trail so I can grab this idol? And so she starts running back to camp, and people start, hurrying back to camp after her. And Tony stays back, the only person who stays back. And because I had been sick all morning, I was like, I'm going to stay at the front of the camp, and I'm going to make myself throw up. I'm going to start throwing up right here. So hopefully he'll walk away from me and leave me alone. So I'm throwing up, and Tony will not leave. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I finally stop, and it's like a standoff between me and Tony, just like standing there, kind of like looking at each other. He won't leave. I won't leave. I'm getting very frustrated at this point. I'm like, Tony, leave. So, I say that I'm sick. Well, in order to say that I'm sick, I say Reynolds, because he was still talking to Carlos. This is before I started getting sick. I said, I'm going to be sick. Will you go get my water bottle? He's like, yeah. So I expect him to come back to help me. He set my water bottle back with, I want to say, with somebody from production. I was like, Reynolds, I was needing help. Like, this is what I was doing. So me and Tony are in this standoff.
And this is why you had to vote him out, right?
Right. Literally. So I was like, you're not being helpful here. So me and Tony are in this standoff. Eventually he like goes around the corner, and it was hidden under these boards that were left over from last season because of the mud. We couldn't, like, it was so slippery. They had to lay some like 2x4s down. So it was hidden under one of the 2x4s. And I pick it up, and as I pick up the idol and put the board back down, Carlos rounds the corner and like sees me stuff it into my shirt. So at that point I knew, okay, Amber knows I have an idol. Reynolds knows I have an idol. Carlos knows I have an idol. Tony probably assumes that I knew where the idol was because we were having this weird, uncomfortable standoff where I wouldn't let him near the boards. Like, so I was like, people know I have this idol, and then if I use it now on Reynolds, I get rid of it, and then I'm still in trouble. Or I just save it now and just make people not know if I'm going to play it this round, and then I can save myself with it next time. So that's kind of why I didn't play it either, because I was like, now on top of being in this situation where people are going after Amber and Reynolds and they can't, now some people know I have an idol, and I don't know what Tony or Carlos are for sure going to do with that information. So that's where I was at.
And you mentioned before, you really didn't think this vote was going to go to the rocks.
No.
Yeah. And so in the most cruel twist of fate, Carlos tries to force rocks, but flips his vote incorrectly and causes Reynolds to go home.
Yeah, I didn't think that Carlos would force it to go to rocks. I thought that Austin or him or Tony would switch it. I didn't think that they would let it go to rocks. So
I think Carlos was so sure that Tony was going to flip. Carlos like, I need to flip in response to Tony flipping to ensure it stays deadlocked.
Yeah, I would have been shocked if we'd gone to rocks, because I just didn't think that any of those three were going to let it happen.
So after this, the next vote is going to end up being Amber. And this is going to be, there's a lot of fireworks after Reynolds goes home.
Yeah, there's a lot of fireworks. I didn't know this until after the game that Amber said she was going to punch me in the face. And that makes me laugh. Like, I don't think it doesn't bother me. Like, I think that's funny. If I would have heard it in the moment, I probably wouldn't have reacted. Like, I knew she was having like a very emotional response. But my mom texted me after the game and was like, Amber said she's gonna punch you in the face. Is she being nice to you? And I was like, yeah, she's being nice to me. It's fine, Mom. Like,
this next challenge is the foot challenge, the one where you have to arrange blocks or something like that with your foot that Megan wins. And it ends up going very fast.
Yeah, and I'm actually pretty good at that usually, but that day was a lot. With like being sick, and then Reynolds had just told the whole game about my idol on his way out the door, and Amber was so mad at me and was like yelling at me, like yelling at everybody. I mean, and so it was like I was very thrown off the rest of the day, I think.
And at this point, it's also very clear that Carlos has been playing double agent. If it wasn't clear last run, it's very clear by the final 7.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing at the final 7? What's your strategy?
Yeah, good question. My strategy at the final 7 was to. Is this when I start going after Megan? I feel like I say Megan's name.
You do go for Carlos this round.
Okay, yeah.
In fact, you vote for Carlos the next 2 rounds. This round and the finals. You vote for Carlos the final 7 and final 6, but not when Carlos goes home.
Yeah, that sounds right. Here we're back to my strategy from early on. Like people are so tight now, like Megan and Todd, and I wanted to split them up. I know I said Megan a lot, but it was like not going to happen. So this is where I start to get frustrated with Austin, because I'm starting to realize that he's not going to take out Megan. And I still wanted to go at this point. I was like, I want Tony or Todd to be at the end.
Yeah.
So I wanted that to happen. So I didn't want to vote Tony or Todd. But Austin, is this when Tony leaves?
So we're at the Amber vote.
Oh, the Amber vote. I mean, the Amber vote was like, Amber didn't seem like she was willing to talk to me or vote with me. So that was like, not me, I guess. Let's just do that.
So you voted for Carlos, so did you think it was going to be 3-2, 3 on Amber, 2 on Carlos? Or do you know it's going to be a 3-2, 3 on Carlos, 2 on Amber to try to flush his idol?
Yeah, and I knew that he was going to try and save Amber. So I was willing to. I didn't want to end up collateral because Amber was so mad at me. I didn't know how they were voting, and I wanted to make sure if he used his idol or if a shot in the dark or whatever. I didn't want to go. Yeah.
So Amber goes out. You're at the final 6. So it's you, Tony.
Oh, okay. 6. I play my idol.
Yes, you do play your idol at final 6. Because I think it's the last time you could play it.
Yes, it was the last time I could play it. I knew I wasn't getting votes that round, but I was like, hey, like everyone knows about this already, so I might as well just play it. And I knew I wasn't in trouble that round. Obviously, I was like, it's not me, so I'm not going. But I didn't necessarily want it to be Tony that round. I'm pretty sure I wanted Carlos, didn't I?
Yeah, so you voted for Carlos. You and Tony both vote for Carlos. Everyone else votes for Tony. Was there a world where did you know Tony was the vote? Is there a world where you could play your idol and Tony instead?
I think I knew it was Tony. I'm trying to remember now. I think I knew it was Tony. But I didn't really I didn't trust Tony even to not do something crazy, or I didn't know what Tony was going to do. And I think I wanted Carlos to vote. No, I don't remember I'm trying to remember, and I don't really remember.
One other thing about this round I want to talk about is there's the touchy subjects.
Yeah.
Did you get any superlatives?
Yeah, and I don't remember what they were.
You do go on the reward with Todd and Tony.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was good. Touchy subject. That actually is important to bring up, because that's when all happening at the same time, where Reynolds announced my idol. And I was feeling like very much down in the touchy subjects. The way that went, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not winning this game. Like I'm not winning. And so I feel like I was, I don't want to say mentally checking out, because I wasn't checking out. I was still very much actively trying and playing, but I was feeling very much down. I'm pretty sure I had like a mental breakdown after before the like right after the next challenge, maybe, or right before touchy subjects, where like I was crying and Austin like comforted me. But yeah, I was feeling like very down about where my game was at that point, and touchy subjects like made it worse because I felt like people didn't think that I could win, which when I got out, I realized that wasn't the case. Like if I would have been in final 3, I could have pulled votes too. But I was really mentally having the worst time that day, like staying as focused as I needed to be, I think, in these next few votes. And I think that's why, like when I'm talking about them, one, it's hard for me to remember what was even going on. And two, like I knowingly went into these votes voting not the same as like where the numbers were, because I was still like, I'm going to vote how I want to vote, even though I know that people aren't listening to me, aren't going to do what I want. And it was becoming frustrating because I think I said this in my exit interview, like Austin pivoted back. Like Austin and I think we're on like a really level playing field, and then he pivoted better at that point when we took out Reynolds and I was able to. And so I was frustrated. And so it's a hard end game through those last couple rounds right there.
Would you say that your experience on Unfinished Business was just much more of an emotionally challenging game than your Valor's Points? Or is it just because,
of course, because it was longer.
Yeah.
But that day was just like what we went on. We had that day where it was such a high of like the back and forth between the two tribes, and it was so much fun, to a day where the morning starts off with like me pissing off people I've been working with, them yelling at me, exposing my idol, touchy subjects making me feel like not very good about myself, even though I didn't get any negative superlatives. All of the positive ones were going to the same people, and I was like, damn. So I know when I went on that reward, circling back with Todd and Tony, I was pointing these things out. I was like, hey, like Carlos, Austin, and Megan are getting these positive remarks in the touchy subjects. Like, are we not concerned about this? I think the three of us should be concerned here. Like, that's concerning. Are you not concerned? And I think my downfall was expecting Todd and Tony to be concerned about that, especially expecting someone like Todd to be concerned about that when he was in with Megan and Austin, because he's so loyal. He's such a loyal guy, where it's like, if I were in his position and people had just voted in touchy subjects that the two people who are telling me they're taking me to the end with them are going to get votes at the end to win, that they're going to beat me, I'd be like, hey, I need to start taking them out, even though they're my allies. But Todd doesn't think that way. And I think my mistake was expecting Todd to think a way that he doesn't think. So like, I started to view Austin as somebody who I maybe needed to cut soon too. But he didn't flip in his mind to view Austin and Megan that way. And sometimes it's hard. You can't expect everybody to necessarily think the same way you think.
So, no, I agree. It's like you said, it's hard when you approach the game one way, you expect other people to, and then they just don't. You're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
How can I work with this?
Right. Like, I don't really have any regrets because like I was thinking and I was playing and I was doing what I could with the hand I had. But it's like, sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you think that other people are gonna want to do whatever it takes to get votes at the end and win the game the same way that you would, and that they just don't see it that way. Like, I don't think that don't think that Todd saw that Megan or Austin would both beat him when I could see it at that point.
It seems, looking at the way this merge played out, if Todd and Megan had left the game, it would have opened a lot of things up more for you, because Todd and Megan were just never in your courts.
Yeah.
And I think and that's challenging. I think it sounds like it's a combination of, like, you have the strange Lydia vote out, right, where you're not given that, like, where you have a kind of a combination of Amber Reynolds don't trust you, and they want to target Brent, who's an ally of yours, and with Lydia not being in a good place to talk, you're just kind of like, you're forced to vote with yellows. And then just the way kind of the double immunity win shook out is you didn't have the freedom to target, let's say, Todd or Megan at any junction.
Every time I tried to target Todd or Megan, it wasn't an option. Or like the big time where I did try to target both of them, Adam told Megan, or Megan told Todd the one time when I didn't. I was still like figuring out where I stood with Megan, and I said Todd, and she shut that down. And then when I said Megan, Adam, that information got back to her right away through Adam. So those were the two of the times where it was options. And with the double immunities, they were winning a lot. Like, it was not very easy. And Megan had the idol that we knew about, and she played it on Todd. So it's like, yeah, one of them needed to go. And I was regularly saying Megan's name and just not having anybody willing to do that.
And conversely, like, you're it's a rock and hard place, because if let's say you play your idol for Reynolds at 8, now you have Carlos, Amber, and Reynolds still with an idol at final 7. Those two are going to work with each other, and, like, is that again playing to 4th? It's like that's a true, you have to break up as well, even if you did idol out Megan.
Yeah.
And so it would have been very difficult both ways with these sets of 3 against you.
Yeah, I think their correct idol play on Todd and getting out Skylar then is when it's like I was always playing to somewhere kind of be 4th. Like I never was in a spot in the game where I was somebody's number 1 and where I was really going to get there without having to fight my way there. And that's why, even if it doesn't make sense to everybody, that's why I had to gamble on the last immunity challenge, like getting to 4th and trying to win that. Yeah.
So the last day, you have that wilderness survival challenge where the results are going to be read after the votes are cast. And so how did you feel going into that challenge?
I felt good about the challenge because I knew that book. I didn't know one question, though. That's the one that I got wrong. Austin got right. That's how he won.
What was the tiebreaker if you both had gotten everything right?
There was 3 tiebreakers, I believe.
Okay.
And they told me I would have lost the tiebreaker, and then I said no, you're incorrect, because it was the tiebreaker was asking how many animals were mentioned, and they told me the number, and I said no, you're incorrect, because there's a sentence in the book. It might not have a picture, but there was a sentence that like said the word wolf, and I was like, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. So I know back because I remembered every page of this book except for the one page at the end that I didn't read because it was about like fire safety, and I like skimmed it, but I couldn't remember what was the dry month.
Because I remember everyone's was very surprised that Austin took this immunity and not you. I think everyone just assumed going in the extravaganza you were immune, which is as good as immunity, to be honest.
Right, exactly. It was as good as immunity because my name never came up because everyone assumed. And so that I was very cocky going into it about winning, and that helped too. Everyone assumed I was cocky about it. I didn't get any votes. And so it worked out for me regardless.
How are you feeling physically that last day? Are you still feeling ill like you were the day before? Or are you feeling a bit better?
I wasn't throwing up as much that day. But the day before had just taken everything out of me. So I didn't feel great, and I was feeling frustrated trying to find a path to the end at that point.
I mean, like at the final 5, like what does your path then look like? Because Carlos is the target at 5, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, Carlos was a target at 5, and I knew I wanted to sit with Todd still at that point. So like at final 5, there was no way I was letting Todd go. If it was up to me, which not a lot was up to me at that point. So Megan or Austin were kind of the options for who I wanted to go.
Well, you vote for Megan at the final 5, and and Carlos votes for Austin. Everyone else votes for Carlos. And that leads you to the final 4.
Yeah.
And you get to play probably my least favorite puzzle, Instant Insanity.
Yeah. Ugh, that was frustrating for me. One, it was frustrating for me because I couldn't do the ring toss. I started the puzzle 10 minutes later than everyone else because I couldn't get one single ring on a pole, which was like one of the most frustrating things that's ever happened to me in my life, I think. Do I think if I had started the puzzle 10 minutes earlier, I could have got it? Maybe, probably. I everything at the end when Pete showed us how to solve it, like I had already figured out. I had those pieces in. I just couldn't make it work. And I think like obviously if I had played that puzzle earlier in the game, had not been so sick and just like had everything taken out of me from the day before, maybe it would have gone a little bit better. Like I don't think that. Yeah, I don't know. Damn puzzle.
So, did you feel like there was any shot at convincing Austin to let you go to fire, or did you know going to that tribal council that it would like you were getting your name written down 3 times?
The second I lost, I would say even before I lost, like the second it came to final 4 or final 5, I guess, because I knew I wasn't going final 5. I knew I was going out if I did not win final 4 immunity. I was very aware of that fact early on. And the second I lost, I knew I was leaving. The fact that there was even some discourse about whether or not I was leaving, obviously I still pitched, like I still tried. But the fact that there was even any sort of discourse between Megan and Todd about keeping me was shocking to me. So I did appreciate that. I knew Austin was going to vote for me and I was going to vote for Austin, and it was going to come down to what Todd and Megan decided to do. And I was pretty certain they were going to keep Austin.
Had you won immunity, who would you have pushed to get? Would you have voted Austin out or Megan?
Austin.
Okay. At that point, you were
promised Austin I would do Megan. And for most of the game, I truly would have done Megan. And I think after touchy subjects, where people had so many positive things to say about Austin that I might have voted. I would have probably voted him out then. I would have had to really think about it. But I was leaning more towards Austin at that point.
How do you think you would have done against Austin or Megan in the final 3?
When I got to the jury, I was told, obviously, is that Skylar would have, especially if Austin was out, Skylar would have voted for me.
Austin maybe votes for you.
Maybe votes for me. Amber and Reynolds would have voted for me. That's 4. Adam is me, maybe me or Megan. I think I would have had Adam's vote if I went against Austin. If I went against Megan, I don't know. So he's a maybe. If I'm against Megan, Megan has Sharif's vote 100%.
Yeah.
I maybe have Josh's vote potentially. I think there were votes there for me to win. I think it was very possible. I think it might have been close for sure. I'm not saying I would have 100% won against Megan, but I think there was votes there where it was a possibility.
Now, had you been in final 3, you would have competed in the same snake puzzle. Maybe they would have chosen a different puzzle because you already seen it, but there was a puzzle for a jury vote block. If Megan is on, who would you have blocked if you were with Megan or Austin?
If I was with Megan, I would have probably blocked Sharif. If I was with Austin, who would I have blocked with Austin? I don't know. I would have to think about that one.
So going in the final tribal council, were you leaning towards either one of the players? I felt like you seemed pretty positive on Awesome. You're heading out of the game initially.
Yeah, and I voted for Megan to win.
So talking about final tribal council, what changed for you in that?
Megan's final tribal performance was very impressive to me. Megan was not a finalist who, especially after that final tribal, deserved no votes to me. Like, I mean, she was going to get Sharif's vote, but like Megan deserved votes in my mind. And I just think her performance in that final tribal was really, really well done. Austin won. Austin was probably going to win, but I thought Megan deserved votes, and I thought that, especially as someone who had like gone after Megan for a lot of merge unsuccessfully, she deserved my vote. And yeah, she did a really, really good job explaining her game and explaining the things that she did well in order to make up for the things that she didn't do so well. And I just thought she did a really good job.
Were you surprised at how close the vote was? And I think it ends up being 5-3.
No, not really. I was pretty sure Austin was going to win because we did that jury roundtable too. Yeah. I was pretty certain.
How was the post game for you?
I was just exhausted. Like being fourth, like I got voted out just a few hours before the end of the game. So I hadn't got to sleep yet, like in a real bed or even a couch, like anything. And then I was disappointed. I wasn't like mad at anybody, but I was very disappointed because fourth place is like it's the worst spot to go out. Like if you get to the end and you lose, it's like, okay, like you did everything you could, like you got there, you tried, that's what happens. If you go out earlier, it's like, okay, like I wasn't gonna win. But to go out fourth and then to go out fourth and be told by jurors that you would have had their vote was difficult.
Frustrating, I imagine.
Yes, it was upsetting. I was just disappointed, I think. So I was like just exhausted the night that the game ended.
I mean, you went from fourth boot from your original season to fourth place and a legitimate contender to win the game. Has that made this experience have a better takeaway from your first outing?
Yeah, and even, I mean, placement obviously plays a role in that, but even if I had just made it a little bit further, I had so much more fun with some of my tribes and like got to have more of like a survivor experience this time, just because of like my longevity in the game. That makes it better. And like I did everything I set out to do. I made it further than my original placement. I made merge. I won individual immunity. I found an idol. Like I had an idol played on me successfully. Like I did so many things that like I didn't think that I would have the opportunity to do even when I decided to come back. So it was an amazing experience and so much better than my first experience in that regard.
What have you had any takeaways then from this experience or things you learned about yourself?
Things I learned about myself. I feel like I said the same thing. It's just like that you can do hard things, that I can do hard things, that I can push myself in ways that I had never tried to before I first decided to play Reelfoot the first time. Like I'm not really an outdoorsy person. Like I'm not someone who does stuff like this. And like I said, I knew Survivor strategy and could play Survivor strategy and had it in me. But after like my first experience, I was ready to come out again and show other people that I could do it. So it was really rewarding to just like get to be like, see, I'm not crazy. Like I can do this and I'm good at this. And then like something else that I've learned about myself is apparently the beginning of the game is hard for me because I was also not in a great spot on my starting tribe this time. So I think that has shown me that I am not as quick to like open up as I thought I was, or like outgoing, or I'm more quiet than I even realized I was.
Well, I mean, these games are it's a high stress environment that you throw yourself into. You're an unfamiliar place with a bunch of strangers. You're not an outdoors person, so you're not very comfortable. You're not eating or sleeping, and I think it could be hard to kind of get into that feeling or mindset. Like, and I can imagine, like, if you wouldn't, like we talked about, like, would you want to be on the real show? How much more amped up that would be. It's like, oh, I'm sleeping on nothing. Don't even have a tarp, and they're not giving us rice anymore, so I'm not eating.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just like, that's not something that necessarily changes anything about how I live my day-to-day life, but it was just something interesting for me because, like, in my normal life, I am someone who, like, my friends think that I'm, like, loud and outgoing and, like, very talkative and things. And then when I am in a group of people, like this group of people, to realize that I'm, like, more of, like, a smaller personality in a lot of ways is, like, a shocking discovery for me.
Maybe an extroverted introvert. I don't know, however you want to spin that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely, what is it, an ambivert, which is like both. I definitely
you kind of switch based off the scenarios.
Yeah, and I need alone time to recharge for sure.
So do you still feel disappointment about your experience, or are you kind of reconciled at all?
No, I don't feel disappointment. That first night I felt disappointment, and so being, like, around everybody, I was like, probably not a fun time. I know it wasn't a fun time. I didn't, like, drink and do any of the party stuff. Like, I literally was like, I just need to, like, chill on the couch. But after that, like, the next day I was fine. I just needed, like, a good sleep.
A bed.
Oh yeah, a bed, a good sleep, some air conditioning, like, clean. And then I was fine. I haven't, like, actively looked back at, like, a lot of stuff, because, like, I lived it. I know how it went, even if, like, you know what I mean? I know how it went for me, and, like, I'm content with that experience and, like, the way that I remember it and how it felt for me. So I don't really need to, like, watch everything back. Yeah, I'm not disappointed. Obviously, I wish I would have won. I'm not a crazy person, but I feel really good about going from fourth boot to fourth place. I think it's a little bit, like, poetic, and I do think, like, the theme was unfinished business, and, like, I think that my experience, maybe more so than anyone else's, really embodies that, like, how much I grew from the first time playing to the second time playing, and how much happened and changed. And I told Parker I wanted a Kelly Wentworth experience. I wanted my Kelly Wentworth moment, and I definitely had that. No,
you got votes put on you and a successful idol, and someone got blindsided.
And now, when I said that, I wasn't asking for fourth place. I tempted the fates. I wasn't asking not to win, but that's what happened. So,
does that make Austin your Jeremy Collins?
I guess so.
Well, Carley, as we wrap up here, is there any last moments or things you want to talk about your experience?
Gosh. No, not really. I'm just, like, thankful to have had the experience, and I think that other people should definitely apply and try it because it's fun. And now I don't know if I'd ever do it again, but I loved it for what it was.
So I'd like to throw a couple rapid fire questions at you as we wrap up here then. Just, the first thing that pops your mind, who from your original season still has unfinished business?
Julia. I wanted Julia to be there.
Who from this current season still has unfinished business?
From this current season still has unfinished business? Frank.
What was your favorite challenge?
My favorite challenge is the challenge I won, beanbags, although finishing the snake puzzle in that early on, like, tribe immunity is a second.
What was your favorite camp life moment?
Oh, Corey coming out of the trash bag. Easy.
Who do you wish you had a chance to work with but didn't?
I would have loved to work with Sharif for real. Different world.
The different timeline.
Yeah.
Who surprised you the most out there?
Carlos.
What was your lowest moment in the game?
That whole entire day I was sick from the time I started getting sick through my idol being exposed, through Amber yelling at everybody, through touchy subjects.
What was your highest moment then?
Oh, the idol being successfully played on me, even though I still feel so bad that I jumped up and celebrated before Sharif's torch had even been snuffed. Horrible. When I sat down and saw him, I felt so bad. And then when I got to the jury, he was very mad about it, and we had to have a conversation because I did feel terrible.
Shot in the dark, love it or hate it?
I loved it.
And you've already kind of said this, but would you ever play another game?
Probably not. Never say never. Right now, it's still so fresh. No, I don't want to go stay outside ever again. I guess most games are shorter, I guess.
Well, you know, there's a couple. There's like a game in Macomb, Illinois, which is so close to Chicago, and it is shorter. And you know, and so it's just to think about it.
Yeah, never say never. But right now, I don't know.
Give it time. Anyone or anything you want to shout out as we wrap up?
No.
No, Carley, thank you so much for first being patient. Because you are in the tail end of the interview, so thank you for being patient. But thank you for also taking the time to tell me your story and just talk to your game. I think you had a very unique experience. It sounds like because you won so many challenges, you really walked in the merge kind of like a lone man standing and had to figure out things from there and really had scrape through to do some amazing things over the course of the merge.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you as well for everyone who's tuning in. This was a Surviving Reelfoot Unfinished Business deep dive interview. There's not many players left at this point. I will be talking to Clark Wilcox next week, who will have a very different experience. And then hopefully I can track down Brent. I needed him to respond to my message because I'd love to hear from him too. But yeah, so we're kind of coming to the tail end, but thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you again, Carley, for your time and for running with me for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And have a great evening, everyone.